Welcome to the Thinking Tackle podcast. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Today, we're joined by longtime carper Clive Williams. Now, if Clive isn't a household name already, then maybe he deserves to be, because he's designed some of the most innovative tackle we've seen in the last 20 years, notably the Korda Krusha. And Clive joins us just after the publication of his first book, Sling Yer Hook, which includes some incredible carp as well as some fantastic stories, some of which we're going to get into today. Clive, thank you so much for coming in, mate.
Pleasure.
And I have you at a slight disadvantage here because having spent the last couple of weeks with your new book, I know you a lot better than you know me. But I've really enjoyed it, mate. I should say that. But what I do want to know is a little bit about why you decided to write it.
I suppose it goes back 25 years, really. I've always been a collector of carp books. I've always loved reading other people's stories. And I just thought one day I'd love to see my title in amongst all them great titles. And I just started, before the days of computers, phones, stuff like that, I started jotting a few things down, and I think I wrote the first 85,000 words by hand in an A4 book that I still got at home. It was scribbled. And basically, really, that was it. I just wanted to do it for myself.
Yep.
And just get my stories down. Not really to make money or to be famous or anything like that. Just wanted to see my stories up there with the rest of the books.
Who on earth had to type out that whole book?
The
handwritten stuff.
A girl called Jo Ribbons done it for me.
Yeah.
When I realised that I was going to actually do something with it, I actually read it and thought, well, I can't give that to nobody because you couldn't understand it. So I actually got the A4 book and I hand writ the first 85,000 words in readable writing.
Yeah.
And gave it to the girl, and she typed it. The last half of the book was done on a computer because by then I'd got computer literate, if you like, and started to do things like that, and that's really about it, really.
So most people, when they decide to write a book, Clive, they probably do it in a year or something. But how long were we actually talking since you decided that you were going to commit?
I would say 20 years.
20 years.
I would say 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've probably done 10 years of it, and then unfortunately my wife became ill, and I put it to one side and didn't bother writing it.
Yeah.
Didn't do another thing. And then just before lockdown, I thought a few friends pestered me, what have you done with it? And I had a little read of it and thought, I need to finish that for my own, nothing else, just for my own satisfaction. And that's how I finished it, really.
Yeah.
I had a few chapters that I knew I had to write, and I've done it.
So after 20 years, how does it feel to have put that final full stop in?
Great, to be honest.
Yeah.
When I wrote the last chapter, I was over the moon. I never ever thought I'd finish it. I really didn't. I just thought I'm never ever going to finish this.
Well, and I'm glad you did, mate, because not only is it a really entertaining read, which I think people who know you would expect, it documents quite a big period of carp fishing history, actually.
Yeah.
And I loved the Longfield stuff. I think for me, and the Savay stuff, we're going to come on to that, but the Longfield stuff particularly, because of how little has been published on that in the past, we don't have loads of that to draw on. So to get it from your angle as well, was great. Take us back to the Longfield days, if you would, Clive, because this is a time that was very, very important in the development of the sport that we see today.
Yeah, I mean, I knew about Longfield. Before I fished it, I'd read a few snippets. I knew that people like Kevin Maddox had been up there, Richie McDonald, people like that, people that I idolised. And then I just thought one day I need to go and have a look. I mean, this was in the days when there was no motorway. I think it was quite a long drive. And I can't remember what sort of vehicle I had. I think it was probably a bashed up old thing anyway. But I got there, I found it, looked at it. It was only little. It didn't frighten me, unlike Savay. When I first went to Savay, different kettle of fish altogether. I think I went there in 1982. It was the first time I went there. I can't remember how many nights I fished, but it wasn't many. I never saw many people fish it either. I only ever fished in the week. I never fished at weekends. Blanked. I don't know how many nights. Not many. And in them days, probably never fished it in the winter, not until a little bit later on. And then I left it alone for a few years, didn't bother with it, but kept buying the ticket. I think it was Leisure Sport at the time that had it. And then in '88, I joined a local syndicate water in Sussex that was rumoured to have a lot of big fish in it. And we found out later it was hogwash. There was maybe one or two, but it was very hard water because you could only fish one bank off a road. It was bundles of lily pads. I think I saw one carp. I went there probably 4 times, and I think on the 4th night I said to myself, this is not going to happen here. So I phoned my mate up, Kev, and said, I'm going to go and get back to Longfield. And it was in 1988 that I went back to Longfield, and I don't know why, I just turned up the very first session. I just fell in love with the place. It just had an awe about it. There was something about it. I spotted 1 or 2 big fish. Then I started going quite regular and meeting other people like Rob Malin and Dave Wibley and the famous 5, so to speak. Got on like a house on fire with them. There wasn't many people fishing it. Probably no more than about a dozen that were regulars. I just found the whole place fascinating.
Tell us a little bit, paint the picture for us, Clive, for those of us, well, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have been to Longfield, but in more recent years, it's obviously largely called Fox Pool now, but very, almost like quite a unique venue, very, very deep margins, lots of bits of rubble sticking out everywhere, like you wouldn't say it was a beautiful lake, I don't think.
I found it nice, very weedy, extremely weedy, very deep. And in them days, we didn't have the tools like we got today, like with Barker floats and echo sounders and stuff like that. You had to find your own features. And I think a lot of the features that they discovered when they emptied it, a lot of us knew they were there, but we didn't know how severe they were.
I mean, they looked like you'd never fish some of the stuff that
they were severe.
that they uncovered.
Yeah, they were really severe, some of them. And I'm sure that a lot of the times you were probably casting rigs out, not knowing what they were lying on. And you probably had no chance. That's probably why bites were few and far between.
I actually really respect the attitude that comes across in your book. And I think it's common to quite a few of the lads who fished through that era. You could take a blank, you boys, couldn't you?
Oh,
because
without a doubt.
you made your own fun as well.
Yeah, you had to take a blank. That was all part of it. We knew there wasn't many fish in there. There was more than we knew when they drained it. We was all quite, I wouldn't say horrified, but surprised that certainly the commons that came out that we never knew existed at all. We knew there was 5 or 6 very big fish, and they were the targets.
One thing that is, I suppose, people might find strange now is that you'd fished a procession of small waters in is it West Sussex?
Sussex,
Sussex. It's like your classic, beautiful sort of farm pondy type.
Estate lake type things. Very small, most of them.
You don't get the big gravel pits down your way, do you?
No, it's no gravel down my way at all. It's all clay.
Yeah. So relatively small carp by today's standards, big back then, but you backed yourself to go to the hardest water in the country.
Well, at the time I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was the hardest water in the country.
Or one of, yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, probably didn't know that it was only one of a handful of waters that had 40 pounders in. The knowledge wasn't out there for people.
Right. So you literally went blind?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. But you had some idea there were big carp?
I knew there was big carp in there because I'd seen pictures of Kevin Maddox and Richie McDonald.
The 3 carp on his legs.
And I knew where they'd come from.
Yeah.
It took a long time to get that information. It's not like it is today. It's all free at hand now. In them days, you had to do a lot of asking, a lot of just digging around, really.
Yeah.
It just floated my boat. I don't know why. Blanking was part of it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it does seem like the guys that fish there, you've got to know them really well. Yeah. Because quite often you're sharing food, and let's face it, you were at the pub a lot.
We were at the pub a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Nearly every night.
I mean, that was as big a part of it.
It was a social thing as well. You know?
Talk to me about the culture then, back then. Why was that done? And was it something that was going on in wider society in the UK, like very pub-based, or was it just the way that you'd lived your life? Or why were you at the pub every night?
I think because the other lads went.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the time in my early days at Longfield, because I went midweek, I stayed away from a lot of that.
Yeah.
I didn't actually go to the pub.
Yeah.
I did a couple of weekends for whatever reason. I don't know what they were. And ended up the pub, and I thought, I quite like this. It's quite a laugh.
Yeah.
And there was no talk of fishing. There was nothing like that. It was
Right.
all about, oh, she's nice and she's nice and she's lovely. And
So you could have your you could have your cake and eat it. You could do your fishing and you could do your socialising as well at the same time.
Yeah.
Because no one does that now, do they? I don't think.
I don't
Maybe
know,
they
to
do.
be honest.
Maybe they do. But it was a huge part of that scene.
It was massive.
And we're talking. Was it the Feathers? Was that the pub?
Feathers was out the road,
Yeah.
Walkable distance. Everyone used to walk up.
So
there.
you'd wind in.
Everyone, all them stories about people leaving rigs out, for me, untrue.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw it. I never did it, and I don't know anyone that did do it.
Yeah.
I think that was a fallacy. All that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it didn't go on. What I'm saying is I never witnessed any of it,
Yeah.
and I certainly didn't do it.
No.
We reel in. We go to the pub. We'd have something to eat. We'd have a few beers, and we come back. And the thing was, everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a problem that we were taking up swims that other people could have been in because everyone was up there.
It's a wonder you caught anything. I mean, you're going for I mean, how much of the time you're on the lake were your rods in the water?
Nearly all the time.
Yeah.
In the daytime.
Yeah.
In the daytime. I've got to say that in 1988, as the season went, I've tried to work this out, and I don't think anybody had a bite in dark.
Right.
Even though everyone come back from the pub and most people pub chucked or dropped them in the edge or whatever. I mean, in them days you weren't clipping up, you weren't using sticks and stuff like that. You were just casting to your spot, so to speak. And I tried to think of anybody that had a bite in the dark, and I don't think it happened.
It's not a surprise, is it? In a way.
My theory of that is the fish were so clever in Longfield, they never fed at night because I couldn't see what they were doing.
Right.
Whether that's true or not, I've no idea, but that was my theory.
See, what occurs to me is there probably hasn't been many lakes with the crazy gravel features that Longfield had, and without that precision that perhaps we now take for granted.
Yeah.
How much were you actually fishing if you pub chucked?
You probably weren't half the time.
I
had a little spot in a secret swim that I found. I don't know how I found it. It's just one day I cast out and I just felt it down and I thought, oh, that feels good. I did actually pull a stroke. I went out in a little dinghy, a little rubber ring one night, and I found that what I'd been casting to, and it was a piece of concrete lying on its side like that. It wasn't flat, had a little slope on it, but at the bottom of it, it was a little flat ledge. Very small, smaller than this table, half the size of this table. And it wasn't far, 50 yards. In them days, the rods weren't like they are now, but it was an easy little chuck. And I could hit that spot every time. And when I hit that spot, I knew I was on it. I think the season I was successful, I had 5 bites off that one spot.
It will come on to what you caught off that spot shortly, because it seemed to be a bit, again, maybe it's a cultural thing, but once you'd identified your spot, you properly stuck with it.
I stuck with it. I tried to fish it as much as I could. I tried to bait it as much as I could. I did bait it while I fished, but when I packed up, if I had any bait left over, it was all catapult stuff then. I made sure that I put them all out on that spot.
And do you think that bait was ending up on that tiny ledge?
A lot of it.
Yeah.
Some of it went AWOL, obviously. And then the seagulls turned up, and then you had to do it in the dark.
Yeah.
I mean, for the first half of the season, there was no seagulls. They didn't, and then all of a sudden they just turned up out of the blue, these seagulls, and they were a nightmare.
So you're catapulting to a very small spot, and there's some kind of gradients involved, and you presume using round boilies, are you at that stage? Yeah. So, did they clear off anywhere around the spot in the end, or?
To be honest, I don't know, Richard.
Because you never went back out to look.
No, I only ever did that once.
And you left a little marker.
And
out
I left
there.
a little tiny little black thing that I put under the thing. It was there for 2 or 3 trips, and then one day I got the binoculars out and I couldn't see it.
And this is a little black blob of polystyrene.
Little
or something.
polystyrene ball. It was a little white ball, and I think I chalked it up with a bit of black paint.
Yeah.
Took it out. I crapped myself when I was going out there
Yeah.
because I thought if anyone turns up and I'm out here, I'm banned. But I had to know what I was fishing on. I don't know why. I just needed to know. I tried fishing all other spots down the route to the left margins. Never had a bite.
So like back then, obviously the Longfield was a lake with, as we've mentioned, lots of big lumps of gravel rising out of the depths. Very complicated features, as it turns out.
Yeah.
How much discussion was there between anglers about oh, there's X spot in this swim and that swim, because we didn't have you didn't have raps, did you, to
Nothing,
talk
really.
about how far out these things
The only
were?
thing I can ever remember was there was a spot they called Richie's Mushrooms, which was, I think, was opposite where I used to fish.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since seen pictures of when it was when the water was taken out, and you can actually see a shape. It does look like a bit of a mushroom.
Yeah, they were
And it
undermined,
went
weren't they? Sort of?
underneath.
Yeah.
So how would you get a bait under there? Impossible.
It's kind of just as well you didn't know the extent of those features, I guess.
I think you'd have gone home.
You just control what you can
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah. I mean, in them days, it was 2 rods.
Yeah.
I know there was strokes pulled at night, and I did it. We put third rods out, but mostly the third rod was, just chucked wherever. So it was basically 2 rods. And I only really used to think I'm fishing with 1 rod, really. I was happy with that.
Given the size of the fish, or just give us a little rundown on the A team that was in there then, Clive, actually.
I think there was 5 fish over 30 pound and a 40.
Yeah. So the biggest one was what would then become Jack the Net Ripper at some stage.
It wasn't, when I first went, it was just 40 pound mirror.
Yeah.
And I think Johnny Allen caught it twice in 1 year, and it got through his net, and that's how it got a name.
Yeah.
And I think there was the big scale, which I never caught, which I really did want to catch.
Great fish.
Yeah, the barking carp, it was called. Apparently used to bark at people. The parrot, which unfortunately had a damaged mouth, but the people never knew how it got a damaged mouth.
No, it doesn't look like, it looks like a deformity to me.
It's probably born like that.
Yeah.
People used to say it'll never get bigger because it's got such a small mouth. Well, rubbish that was, because every time it come out, it was bigger. There was the koi, which very rarely come out, and one that ended up being called shoulders, which when I fished it was just 30 pound, I think. I think there was 5 they called the A team, and then there was a couple of commons that were known, a couple of small commons which I caught, and I think the biggest known common was about 22 pound, if my memory serves me. And then of course when they netted it, I think they got another 12 commons out that no one really knew about.
Yeah.
Amazing, really.
Any surprising mirrors as well?
No,
not
as far as I know.
So you're on what turns out to be probably the best big carp lake in the country, or one of. Was there a tangible sort of atmosphere, Clive, when you were on there?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. The place was buzzing. It was really buzzing. You never got a lot of people walking around. It was always the same people, the same little group of, I guess, 12, 15, maybe 16 people. You very rarely saw people you didn't know. It was like a little club, really.
Yeah. And actually, if a bailiff turned up, they were probably outsiders to a degree.
They were outsiders, yeah.
Obviously, Rob Malin is in your book quite a lot from that era. It feels a little bit like at that time Rob was struggling on there, but obviously he ended up going on a great run in the end from those waters, and seemed to be, he was about to become quite a big deal in big carp fishing in the UK, wasn't he? But not necessarily when you were there. No,
I think that was always going to happen. Rob was always going to catch them. He was single-minded. He's a good angler. He knew what he was doing, and he wanted to catch them. I think that's the difference. He actually wanted to catch them badly, and in the end, he succeeded.
Yeah. And what did you see in Rob that apart from the single-mindedness, as a technical angler? Because obviously we've all read his books since, and he was quite riggy. And now we're going to talk about your big rig development in a minute, but in terms of what Rob was doing, did you see anything interesting at that stage?
Not really. I didn't really look at other people's rigging. In them days, it was quite secret as well. People did try and hide things.
Yeah.
And if you was doing something in your swim that you put it away, you didn't want people to see it. It's not like that today, is it, at all?
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about the rig that you had a big hand in developing on that lake, and probably tried to keep secret for quite a while. The bent hook, which has ultimately influenced every rig we now use, pretty much.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. Well, it was actually shown to me by I was in the Feathers one night, and I got talking at a bar, a bloke called Tony Johnson. Now, if I walked past Tony Johnson today, I wouldn't know what he looks like. I only met him that evening, and he was fishing the water down the road, and he was just generally talking carp fishing. And he was talking about how much he hated boilies, and he used this rig for particle fishing only. And he was trying to explain it to me in the pub, and of course we were drinking beer and all that. And I got on well with the fella, and off we went back to the lake, and off we went, and I thought that was the end of it. The following morning, I was sitting in my having a cup of tea, and all of a sudden this fella's turned up. Here you go, he said, have a look at that. And there it was, a fly hook, bent in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked at it and thought, oh, is that it then? He said, yeah, that's it, mate. He said, I catch all my fish on that. He said, never lose a fish, always hooked in the bottom lip. But I only use particle. Okay, mate, so I put it at one side. He went, I've never seen him since. I wouldn't even have a clue what he looked like today. I took it home, messed about with it. I looked at Rob's, I think it was called a swimmer rig.
Yep.
And I was looking at this rig thinking, you know what? He only uses it with particles, but I'm sure that would work with pop-ups. So I messed about with a couple of little bits and bobs, went down my local tackle shop, bought some fly hooks, bent them. I took them to Broadlands in Hampshire, and I fished with my other mate at the time, Ray. He weren't interested in it. And I fished, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 rods, I think it was 2, one with a bent hook, one without a bent hook. I caught so many fish over 2 days on that bent hook, it was unbelievable. And they were all hooked fair and square bottom lip.
Yep.
Never lost a fish. On the other rod, I probably had a few, they were only small fish, doubles, maybe singles. On the other rod, which was, I would say, was a normal rig, lost a few hooks pulled out, but not on the bent hook. So that was the start of it, and I just thought, it's worth a shout, this, I'll try it. So I took it to Longfield, and the rest is history. I caught 3 of the biggest carp in the lake on it.
Did you understand at that stage why it was working?
I just thought, it's awkward. They can't get rid of it. I actually watched the fish in what they used to call a goose pool at Longfield. I dropped some baits in one day, and I watched the fish go down. It was one of the A-team. I can't remember which one it was. I watched him go down on top of a buoy, and I thought to myself, he's trapped that on the bottom. He was as though he was sitting there with his mouth over it. I could see his gill plates moving. And I thought, well, what's he doing there? And all of a sudden, it's gone back. The boiler's still there. And I thought, well, why hasn't he eaten that? I actually went and made myself a little rig up. I don't think this is in the book. I made myself a little rig up, and I hand lined it on the spot, and I held it in my hand. Same fish came in, and he done exactly the same thing. And I thought, he's got my rig in his mouth. And all of a sudden, he backed off. It was still there. And I thought, well, how's he done that? He's obviously used to what he's doing. And I just think the bent hook was, it was a new idea. And I just think they found it difficult to deal with. It was awkward.
I mean, obviously, the legacy of that rig subsequently, Clive, is that for all of us who are looking at it from these days, the angle of the modern carp angler is that it presumably flips and turns very, very effectively.
I know this business with the finger test, I'm not so sure whether that stands today, but at the time it was relevant, really relevant. When you pulled it over your finger, it dug in, and you thought, well, if that's happening out there, that's why you're getting the bites, that's why you're not losing fish. I know it got a lot of bad press. My theory on that is it was used on the wrong waters. Small fish, I think there was a problem with, but I think bigger carp, they dealt with it, and I don't think it caused a problem.
Well, you've
myself.
only got to look at the head-on shot of the koi in your book. Yeah. Just the most mint fish.
And I always go on about, when people ask me, Basil, that was caught no end of times on a bent hook. That never had a bad mouth in it.
No.
And I think in the right hands it wasn't a problem, but I think on the wrong waters, with smaller fish particularly, I think it did cause a problem, no doubt about it.
And I think it's, perhaps it's not your, you're not going to shout about this, but I feel like it needs to be shouted out to a degree, that the way that we all now use shrink tube is because of what you did with that hook.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that I'd go along with that 100%. And I have to say that is the best way of doing it now. It's far safer for smaller fish, because obviously straight away that straightens itself out. So that issue has gone, but the theory of it is still there. I look at all the rigs in the magazines now, and I always think bent hook, just a variation of a bent hook.
Yeah. And it was because it was so very effective that people started to think about ways that they could replicate it.
Yeah.
But tell me about how it got out, because obviously you've caught these fish on it, which we'll probably come back to, but you would have wanted to keep that secret.
I tried to keep it as quiet as I could. I sat there. I did wonder: is it the bait? Is it where I'm putting it? Is it the rig? But obviously the rig was totally different to what other people were using at that particular time on Longfield. I'm not saying that other people weren't using it, because obviously Tony Johnson was using it elsewhere. I just think it was so awkward for them to get rid of it. It was just, they just couldn't deal with it.
Tell me about how precisely you were setting it up, because what we're talking, like a long, supple hook link at that stage?
I think at the time I was using early days of Kriston, so I was probably using multi-strand originally, which was very awkward to use because it was loads of fibres, and if you had rough hands, and I did have rough hands because I worked in a brickyard at the time, the best way of using it was to actually wet your hands.
Yep.
And then we got onto the braids, the early braids, and it worked better, I think, with the braids.
Well, like your sort of Merlins or silkworms.
Yeah, Merlins and silkworms worked very well with that.
So what were you doing at the hook end, and how are you attaching the bait to the hair? Like, how did that all look?
I basically copied the stringer rig. The swimmer rig.
Through the eye, took it back through
the
eye.
eye. Yeah. And it wasn't a knotless lot. I think it was probably a Palomar knot. I think I might have tied a hair off the shank. I think if you look at it then and now, it's probably quite crude. There's not a lot of finesse about it. Yeah. But I don't think it needed to be.
But in a way, it did help. Whatever, like you say, whatever happened, it elevated your results from someone who was doing a lot of blanking, I guess.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you've caught. Your first big one was the fish we now call Jack, or the 40. Take us back to the moment that you realised that you tripped that one up, and actually a 40 pounder, because your PB at the time would have been like mid-20s.
Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah. What was that like?
Mind blowing. We had a party, should we say? It was mind blowing, to be honest with you. And at the time, I thought, that's it. I'm never going to better that. That's the biggest fish I'm ever likely to catch. Because at the time, I think it was only about 3 or 4 40s in the whole country.
Yeah.
Now it's a wash with them, which is good. It's great.
Yeah.
But when I actually got caught using it, it was quite an amusing story, because I'd been there a few times. I'd had a couple of bites one day and I'd lost a fish, and Rob was there, and Rob came round and said, "Are you not going to put your rod out?" I went, "No, I'll do it later." "Why not?" I said, "Well, because I don't want to do it now. I'll do it later."
He'd full well known why not.
I think he knew I was up to something, but he didn't actually say it. So I waited till they'd gone and redone it. And then the day I got caught, I had the rod over my shoulder looking up for my spot, just about to cast it, and I heard a little voice behind me say, "Oh, that's what you're up to, are you?" I never knew anyone was there, and I turned around, it was Colin Martin's, and he'd seen it, and I said, "Oh, well, there you go, Cole, that's what I've been using." It's basically a fly hook that is bent halfway down the shank, and I've had bites on it. To me, it was just another day. It was just how it was. I didn't think it was anything special at the time. It was just a rig.
And how quickly did that get out amongst, because Colin Martin's moved in the circles of that you did as well?
Well, Colin moved, said his goodbyes, cleared off. It was only me and him there. And about 4 hours later, Colin's come back and said, "Could you take a photo?" I said, "What, you had one?" Which was at Longfield, that was a result. If someone's caught one, that's a result. He said, "Yeah, I've had a common." So I went down the photograph. He said, "I had it on that, look." And he'd bent a hook the other way. I said, "Colin, that's not how I've done it. I've done it that way, not that way." "Oh, well," he said, "it was a 22-pound common or something like that."
How did he even get the bite on a hook bent the wrong way?
Well, the same theory. I think it felt just difficult to get rid of.
Yeah.
And that's really the story of the bent hook.
See, at that point, you could have said to Colin, "Oh, yeah, mate, that's perfect," and left it at that.
I could have done.
You told him.
Yeah, and to be honest, I never really thought anything of it. I didn't think for 1 minute it was going to go as it did. And next minute, Rob's done a book, hasn't he? It's in the book, and then the next season or whatever it was, because I think in them days of the seasons, every time you picked up Angler's Mail or Angling Times, bent hook, bent hook, bent hook, and I think that's where the damage started happening, because everyone was using it.
No regrets in that sense, Clive, that you weren't able to keep it to yourself?
No, not really.
No.
It's got to come out sooner or later, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And as I say, at the time, I didn't think it was that special. I just thought it's a slightly different rig, and that's it.
No, I mean, and there's every chance that, like you say, the combination of things that you were doing right.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of everything I was doing.
You were a bit of a bait man as well, because you'd had, at that stage, I think, your own little bait company.
I tried to sell bait, but I tried to sell it when there was people like Jeff Kemp, Duncan Kay, Rod Hutchinson come on the scene. It was difficult for me to sell it because I was just me, little me. And I had it for about 2 years, and then a local tackle shop dealer who I now know done it for a reason, to get rid of me, which was smart. He offered to buy the lot of me, everything, bags, labels, and I thought, you know what? I want to go fishing. I don't want to be dealing with all this bagging stuff, so I just sold the lot and moved on.
Were you still using a bait that you made at the point you fished Longfield?
Yeah, I made my own bait then.
Right. And confidence levels in that bait were presumably quite high?
Yeah, I was using a mixture of SBS bait, Archie bait, and I remember the flavour was pucker salmon.
Which everyone seemed to use at that point, though.
Yeah, it was brilliant. And I used it with, I can't remember, it was a sense appeal, and I can't remember if it was a Kevin Nash one or a Archie one. But when I mixed the two together, even my mate used to say to me, that doesn't smell fishy at all. It smelled butterscotchy. Had a very, very subtle, nice smell to it. Everywhere I went with it, I caught on it. It was just one of them baits that you smelt it and you knew you were going to catch on it.
I think the thing that may be question in my mind, that arises from what we've just said is, how long did you carry on using the bent hook rig for in your own angling? And also, why the hell would you ever change from a bait that you loved so much? Well,
bait moved on.
Yep.
And obviously it got to the stage where, like most people today, you can't be bothered to roll your own. I spent days rolling bait and got to the stage where you thought, well, I don't really want to do this. I'd rather spend my time fishing. Then I started working in a trade and I was getting bait ready rolled, basically. So that went out the window. As for the bent hook, well, it got banned on a lot of waters. And the tubing came in. Yep. And also Jim Gibbonson's liner rig, which was basically a variation of it, which was a good variation. I started to use that a little bit, caught a few fish on it, and basically went back to just using a normal hook with a bit of tubing on it. I don't go so much now, but I don't use it at all now.
No. One thing from reading the book, Clive, you seem to have done a lot in your life. Like, it's very difficult to pin down what during the various periods, because obviously there's a bit of backwards and forwards in the book. It's not in true chronology the whole way through. You seem to have done a lot of different stuff and quite entrepreneurial as well. Like, you tried the bait company and then talk to us about the cork balls, because that is something, a legacy that again lasts very much until today.
Well, the cork balls all started off really in I was working for Martin Lockett Solar at the time as an agent, and we went on a solar mission to France to show people how to roll bait. And I can't remember the city we went to, but we fished a big river, and it was all involved with a local tackle shop. And we went to the local tackle shop to have a look one day.
Yep.
I was standing there looking about, and I saw this rig display on the bottom wall. I just went and looked at it, and I thought, oh, what are they there? Oh, look at them, little cork balls. Instead of having a boilie,
which would have gone off. Yeah,
they had little cork balls on it, all different sizes. And I looked at them and I thought, oh, they'd be good if you could get them in England for making pop-ups, because at the time I think we were using polystyrene balls, which were all misshapen. Cut a long story short, I'd done lots of phoning around, and I eventually found a company in Bury St Edmunds that would do them for me. I sold them for about 5 years.
We've got a picture here. Would that have been the first?
No, that's
version?
Not the first one. That's
right.
That's when I actually let Harefield Tackle have them.
Okay.
I'd actually packed up selling them when they took that over. I think John Chapman, bless him, lovely man, paid me about 200 quid for that, and I'd already packed up selling them anyway. Yep. So I was happy for him to do that. I ended up buying them from Portugal originally, eventually, because I was paying quite a lot from them in this country. I found out that they were punched out of a sheet. So a 12mm cork ball was punched out of a 12mm sheet. And I said to the fellow, why are they so expensive? He said, you have to buy the whole sheet. So when we've punched them all out, all the extra is thrown away, but you have to pay for that. They were quite expensive. So in the end, I thought to myself one day, where does cork come from? Oh, Portugal. Now, in them days, there was no internet, nothing like that. So I asked around a few people, and somebody said to me, why don't you try the Portuguese embassy in London? Really? Anyway, cut another long story short, I phoned up the Portuguese embassy. I spoke to a lovely girl on the phone, Oh, no problem. She said, I'll send you some information about cork manufacturers, Portugal. Thank you. Put the phone down. I thought, that's the end of that. I won't need no more of that. About 2 days later, I got this envelope through with just addresses, Portugal, cork manufacturers. Went through them, phoned up this one, couldn't speak. Went up that, couldn't speak, couldn't understand them. Eventually, I got through to a bloke who understood me, spoke a bit of English, which is ignorant of us, of course, because we all think everyone should speak English. Then I started buying them from Portugal. But I only ever bought 2 lots because I realised, working in a trade, everyone was going to copy them. So I had my 4 years or whatever it was out of them, and then I decided next year everyone's going to do them, so I stopped doing them.
And this is after the point you stopped doing it.
That's after the point I stopped doing them. That's when I was still repping and I was still going to Harefield Tackle, and John asked me, could I put my name on? I said, yeah, of course you can, mate, no problem.
Now, talk to me a little bit about your professional life, Clive, because obviously you've done loads of different stuff, including trying your hand at various, like the bait or the cork balls, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the products that people now use that you've designed a bit later. But it's tough to, like I say, it's tough to pin down what you did during, like it seemed to be a bit of everything. Was it led by what would allow you to do the most fishing at a certain point?
Yes and no. I know I love my fishing. I never ever fished at the weekends because football for me, if I had a choice between football and fishing, I think I'd have to toss a coin, to be honest.
Yep.
So I only went fishing midweek. Then I got involved in the trade. I did various jobs before that. I drove a van. I worked in a brickyard, which was probably the hardest job I've ever had. Then I got made redundant from the brickyard when I think it would have been about 1990, something like that, when there was a bit of a collapse in the building.
Yep.
I worked in a brickyard and it was 2 shifts. They went down to 1 shift, so half of one shift, half another shift got made redundant. Unfortunately, I was one of them. At the time, I was absolutely gutted because it was a great job for fishing because we worked 4 on, 4 off. So on my weeks when I worked at the weekend, I loved them because I'd have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, and I'd go fishing. And weekends, if I had to work, I had to suffer the football. But the following week, I'd have Saturday off, so I'd go to football, and I'd perhaps fish 1 or 2 days. And then I got involved in the trade, and that really came about from just bumping into Lockie a couple of times at Savay. I knew Dave Chilton from using his Kriston stuff early. And I was out of work for best part of a year. Spent a lot of time fishing in that year. And I desperately wanted a job. I really did, because finances were tough. I wasn't married at the time. I never had a mortgage at the time. But things were still hard. And I really did want a job. And people probably don't remember it, but I used to go down a job centre probably every other day looking for jobs. And there just weren't no jobs about. And then what happened was I sat there one day fishing and I thought, what do I know? I could drive a van. There's no jobs. I can make bricks. There's no jobs. I know a little bit about fishing. I also know Martin Locke and also know Dave Chilton. And I thought, just maybe I could put a little bit of product in my car, take it round and see if I could sell it for them. I approached them both and they both said, yeah, have a go with it. And that's how it all started.
Mad. So you created a job that for yourself, effectively.
That wasn't really there.
Yeah.
And I worked for Lockie for 26 years. I worked for Dave Chilton for 26 years. Great people to work for. Loved my job. Fantastic. Then other things came along like Tracker, Nutribaits. I worked for Nutribaits for 17 years. I worked for Tracker for 17 years. And I loved my job. It was fantastic.
What made you a good agent, do you think?
Honesty. Honesty about the products for a start. Reliable. I did for a while. I went from a car to a van to a transit van. It sort of progressed every year. I started off with just a pen and a paper, and then I had this idea of, because people in them days never wanted to pay carriage on an order. So in them days, if carriage was say £100, and you couldn't get to that carriage, a lot of them would say, "Oh no, I'll leave it. I don't want it." So then I had this idea. Well, actually, Lockie, if you let me have stuff on my van, and I can go to a shop and I only want 80 quid's worth, there you go. There it is. You can have it. You're not going to pay no carriage. I did the same with Christon, and it worked. It just worked.
So you're like a mobile warehouse as well.
I was like a mobile tackle shop, yeah.
Now, your sort of career driving didn't get off to the best start, Clive, did it? From reading the book, that you had one spectacular incident, didn't you, when you first got with the cows? Is that?
Oh, I was actually driving a van at the time, delivering newspapers. I was doing that job, plus I was doing the agency work, because I wasn't sure whether the agency work would actually. I didn't know if it would be successful, and I was working for a friend who had a courier company up in Heathrow, and they was delivering newspapers to the Air Force bases up around Norfolk and around there. It was a nighttime job. I hated it. It was an awful job. And one night I was driving on the A45 by Bury St Edmunds. I was actually listening to cricket on the radio. I remember it clearly. There's hardly any traffic. I'd overtaken a great big Arctic. It was a dual carriageway. I did this again, this was a 4-on, 4-off job. I'd gone past this lorry, not figuring nothing about it, and I was probably doing 60 to 70 mile an hour, just pulling along. I knew the road, driving along in the dark, and all of a sudden I thought, my God, I'm in a field. How have I got in a field? 2 cows standing right in the road. I couldn't do nothing, but I hit this massive cow. I am lucky to be here, no question about it. I don't think I even had a chance to hit the brake. I just hit it at full pelt. It went right across the windscreen. If I'd have had a passenger, they'd have been dead. The seat was up there.
Right.
The van stopped the road, all the lights went out, and it went, the radiator burst. I hit my head on the steering wheel. I had a little cut in the corner of my eye. That was it. I never had a seatbelt on. And I can remember thinking, lorry behind me. So I got out my van. I ran back up the road as quick as I could and flagged the lorry driver down. The lorry driver stopped, thankfully stopped, looked at my van. He actually shunted it off the road for me. I said, well, you might as well just shut it off the road, mate. That's had it. Shut it off the road, off he went. And then a car stopped with 4 nurses in it. They was on night duty. They stopped to help me, and then the police turned up, took me to hospital, breathalyzed me. I hadn't had a drink. I was very lucky. I was very lucky.
So presumably the rest of your career on the road went by a little smoother than that.
Yes, I didn't do that job for much longer because the tackles took off, to be honest.
Yeah.
And reluctantly, I told my mate, I've had enough of doing your driving. It was a horrible job. It was monotonous. And during the winter months, it was dreadful because you're driving all conditions, fog, snow, and it was all windy lanes.
Did you have to how were you sleeping, Clive? How are you keeping alert enough to do the driving in the dark hours?
I never. The days when I was doing that, I didn't do the tackle.
Right.
I used to go home, get home. I'd probably get home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd go to bed. I'd get up at lunchtime, and I wasn't doing the tackle then. And then on my days off, I'd go and do the tackle.
Yeah. But you were getting enough sleep and enough rest to be able to go fishing. And
I was young.
Yeah.
I was young.
Yeah.
So I was buzzing with everything, fishing and everything else.
Now, what is it about you, do you think, that gave you this kind of, what comes through from the book is this, it seems like you really needed to be self-sufficient, and quite often you tried to do so on your own, like with the various things that you did.
I just like being self-employed.
Yeah.
Like being my own boss. And I think I was probably destined at some stage to actually do that. I am a qualified engineer, a thermal engineer, but that was a job I'd done an apprenticeship and I absolutely hated it. I hated it. The day I got my papers signed, I climbed over the fence at the building site at Guildford Hospital and walked out, and I never went back.
Now, and you said earlier off camera that obviously you lost your dad tragically very young. How much do you think that affected your need to make sure that you were provided for? And when you lose the main breadwinner in a family, it must be a big.
Well, I was very young when my dad died. I was insecure, shall we say? I was 16. And I don't know, to be honest, Richard. I don't know.
Because it must have a profound effect on someone when you lose a parent so young. It must do, and maybe that kind of, that kind of relentlessness that you had.
Yeah, I think it probably drove me to prove myself. Maybe.
Yeah.
It's a job to say, really.
Yeah, and one thing you did get from your dad though was this love of the football, and it's something that continues to this day. And we should make the point that you're a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So you'd have gone through the mill at the weekend, because we've just watched the Spurs get the second battle of the bridge, haven't we?
Yeah.
So I want to know. I'm going to jump in there. What was? How were you feeling as that last minute header went in?
It should have been a free kick.
I completely agree.
For pulling his hair.
As an Arsenal fan, completely
For pulling
agree.
his hair. I don't have a problem with.
Did you know, by the way? Sorry, Clive. Did you know? I didn't know this.
It's not a rule.
Exactly that. Hair pulling is not in the rule book for football as an offence.
That's right.
Which is
it's mad.
Ridiculous.
And I went to watch my local team, because now I watch my local team a lot now. I don't go and watch Chelsea anymore.
Yeah, good choice.
For obvious reasons, too much money, too much hassle getting there, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
I go and watch my local team, and on Tuesday night we played at home, and within 5 minutes I was shouting, "Pull his hair! Pull his hair! It's allowed!" All the lads around me were laughing. Even the manager laughed.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, you can't do that on a football field. It's just wrong."
Yeah.
I don't listen. If it's a little tug,
No,
I'll get that. It wasn't a tug. He actually yanked him to the ground.
Yeah.
To be fair, did you see it at all, Rich?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. He's Cucurella's got a big old head of
got a
hair,
bullet.
isn't it?
He's got a bullet,
definitely. And he's just grabbed him, and he's
Literally pulled him backwards over onto his back.
Looked
didn't
like
he?
you'd have some whiplash off the back of that.
I had hair like that once.
Well, yeah,
Different colour.
It is one of the things that from your old pictures, you had a right old barnet.
I did have a
the other
barnet,
day.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, there would be no mistaking you, Clive, on the legs.
My hair was like my dad, strangely. And strangely, my two brothers never had hair like that.
Right.
My oldest brother, he did have curly hair. My other brother, Robert, bless him, I've always said he's a milkman's.
Yeah.
I've always said that. I don't think he is, but that's rather cruel. But my brother knows that, you know.
Yeah. Now, when you'd had your success on Longfield, because you caught Jack, you caught the koi, which was another 40-pounder.
No,
right?
no.
Was it not?
The koi was 30.
38?
34.
Was it 34?
34, 12, I think.
Yeah. A fish that went on to be £40 in Horton, we should say, I guess. And it's not a koi either.
No, it's proper carp.
So you'd have to maybe look at the pictures in Clive's book to establish that it's definitely not a koi, but it's a big, sort of very clean looking mirror.
It's a lovely fish, and it was probably the hardest one to catch out of that A team. It never got caught that often. The year I caught it, I believe it was the only time it got caught that year.
Yeah.
Whereas Jack the Net Ripper, as it became known, got caught. I know Dave Wibley had it. I know another kid he called Neil, can't remember his other name, he called it. I called it. I'm not sure if Johnny Allen caught it that year, I can't remember. But I know it got caught 3 times. The parrot, to my knowledge, came out twice. Rob caught it and I caught it. I caught the parrot on New Year's Eve.
Did you?
That for me, I spoke earlier about bites in darkness. I actually had a bite at 5:30 on New Year's Eve. I was actually in my bag. Me and my mate Kev, no one else there. They'd all gone home. I moved into the secret swim. I was gagging to get in the secret swim because I just knew if I could get in there, I had a chance. They all went home. So me and Kev, I went in the secret. And the plan was, we get our nut down, have a bit of dinner, and we'd go to Feathers, New Year's Eve. We'd have a couple of beers and we'd come back. I was actually lying in my bag asleep, and all of a sudden my buzzer, 5:30 in the night, is absolutely roared, melted. It's one toner. And I thought, what's going on here? It's dark. And I caught a parrot. So we didn't go to the pub at all.
Was that the trip when you got in behind, was it Johnny Allen or someone was in the swim and you went round and saw one show? Was that the...
I think that was Pete Jones.
Pete Jones.
Pete Jones was in there.
Yeah. Pete the burglar. Is that
Pete the burglar, yeah. Unfortunate name that, isn't it?
But you'd seen one and you didn't, perhaps, I guess you didn't let on, and
I
he
didn't
packed
let
up and went.
No, I didn't let on. In them days, everyone tried to keep everything quiet. You know, have you seen anything? No. You knew they were lying. Yeah, everyone knew they were lying.
Yeah.
Have you put much bait out? No, very little. I've been up all night catapulting bait out. You know?
In terms of the winter results, though, that must be one of the biggest winter fish ever caught at that stage.
At that stage, probably, yeah.
Yeah. What, mid-30, 34?
36.
36. I love the pictures of that, by the way. Again, if you're lucky enough to have Clive's book, of which there are very few left, I think, available already, which is great. The sort of very steely winter-looking, it was obviously you bagged it and photoed it the next morning.
Well, we sacked it, and it's not something I do today.
No.
I just wouldn't do it. I did have a camera. I'm not sure if I had a flash. I can't remember. it's not something I'll do today.
No, but it was a done thing then.
Yeah, we sacked it. We put it in the margin. I've actually got a picture at home of it in the margin, in the sack. But I have to say, I didn't sleep.
Right.
I got up every probably hour. I tried to get to sleep. I just couldn't sleep. So I made myself tea after tea, kept getting up, looking at it. That's all right, it's all right. First light, went round, got my mate Kev, said, "Oh, we need to get this fish back." Photographed it, put it back. And it went on to be
Well, I was going to say, it went on to be bigger, not only bigger, but it lived for a long time after that. You know, we're talking like 20 years.
I think
probably.
it got up to £49 in Horton.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
And like undoubtedly the sort of character fish that, you know, perhaps we're not blessed with these days. I know it's very easy to call it a character because of its sort of the way its head looked, but equally the shape of it, and it's incredibly short and wide, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We haven't got a picture of it here, but you know what? I think it's appeared in lots of people's books, and people should check it out in yours, definitely. But Longfield didn't end hugely well for you, did it?
No, not for me, and not for a lot of people. It was a strange occurrence, really, because we all knew the rule. The rule was you was allowed off your rods, I think, for 60 minutes. But we all went out the pub. And as I said earlier, there wasn't other people coming down there. Oh, there's nowhere to fish. There's bag in that swim. There's rods there. That just never happened. There was only us lot fishing it. So when I read that, I thought, well, that's total bullshit, because that's just not the case. What actually happened was we were sitting there. I've actually got pictures of this at home. The bailiffs came round and checked our tickets. We just showed our tickets out. Rob Malin, clever Rob, he was over the other side. He was fishing opposite me. He got in his sleeping bag, put his head down. The bailiffs came round to me and said, "Oh, who's that bloke over there?" "Oh, I don't know." I said. He said, "What, you don't know him?" I said, "No." He said, "What, you fish here?" I said, "I don't know who he is, mate." "Well, he's asleep." I said, "Well, it's nothing to do with me." I thought, I'm not going to grass him up, am I? Anyway, story goes, we didn't think nothing of it. We all went up the pub that night, apart from Steve Briggs. Briggsy came down for the day, and he was in the middles, I think, or no, the little noddy next to me. I was in the secret, he was in the little noddy. We all came back to see Steve, and Steve said, "Oh, the bailiffs have been round." "Oh, that's weird, they've been round today. What's that all about?" We all thought, actually, Rob, fair play to him, he packed up on the spot in the middle of the night and went home, because we all thought the bailiffs will be back tomorrow and we're now all in trouble. So the next morning we all get up, doing our normal, making cups of tea and what have you, waiting for a visit. Never happened. I think this was it was after I caught the parrot, or was it before I caught the parrot? I think it was before I caught the parrot. So it would have been around about October, November time. And we thought, oh, we're in trouble here. Bailiffs never showed up. What's going on there then? What was that all about? Just carried on fishing throughout the winter, going up there, never heard nothing. End of the season come, March the 15th, I'll get a letter through my door. On such a day, you weren't there, you're banned 2 years.
Harsh, 2 years.
Yeah, I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. I phoned my mate, Kev, or actually at the time, Kev lived just round the corner from me, so he's got a letter as well, because Kev was with me. Then we found out all the other lads had been banned, obviously not Rob, because he was clever about it. So I was desperate not to lose my ticket, because I actually wanted to catch big scale. That was the only time in my life, really, where I've had a target fish. I really desperately wanted to catch that fish. So I wanted to keep my ticket, so I thought, what can I do here? I had a friend who had a garage, so I went down to see him, told the situation. I will say this, because I did lie. I got an invoice for a broken down vehicle. At the time, I think I had an escort car. So I had an escort car that broke down in Church Street in Staines. Oh, lovely, that would do me. So I phoned up, I think his name was
Jack Ashford, wasn't it?
Jack Ashford, yeah. I phoned him up, and they had offices at Thorpe Park. I explained the situation, and I said, "Can I come and see you, Jack?" And explain what happened. "Yeah, you can come and see me." He was a grumpy old bugger. So me and Kev went up to see him, told him the situation, showed him the invoice, and I said, "Look, that's why I wasn't there. My car broke down." I got to say, he looked at it, looked me in the face, chucked it at me and said, "You're lying, you're banned." And honestly, at the time, I thought, Can't argue with that, can I? I can't argue with that because you've just caught me being a right, lying. So I just took my punishment and went.
But as it goes, Longfield didn't persist much longer after that.
No, they drained it, got rid of the fish, and truthfully, I've said this before. What they did to that was criminal. That would not happen today. It would not happen.
Well, these were very rare animals in the UK at the time, weren't they?
And I just think that leisure sport, they said at the time there was a problem at the lake. Well, I never had a problem.
Were you the problem, do you think?
Well, they said that we were the problem. Not just me. Everyone that fishing there was a problem. And I just thought that's garbage because there's only, as I said, a dozen or 15 people fishing it. We're all doing the same. We're all getting on. We're all friends. No one's moaning about him over there or him over there. So where's this problem coming from? And I actually think they saw it as an excuse to get rid of it, get the fish out, get them to a bigger water where they could sell more tickets at a clubhouse. And I think that's what they've done. I think it was a financial thing. And if you look at Longfield now, it's producing 40 pounders again.
And it's unchanged.
And well, apart from they've smashed all the undergrowth out.
Yeah, but they didn't build Tesco on top of it.
No. That was the time they're going to build a supermarket. Yeah, absolute rubbish.
You weren't. I mean, most of your cohort didn't follow those fish to Horton, did they? Because it left a bad taste. No. But you weren't tempted.
No, I thought it was wrong what they did, and I'll be honest. I thought to myself, well, even if I apply for a ticket, I won't get one anyway. Because
and actually, from memory, Big Scale was one of the first to die in there, wasn't it? I think it popped up. I think it died that first year. Popped up dead.
Possibly, yeah.
I think in our IP corner. I think that's where it.
Yeah, and I had no interest in catching the others. I did want to catch Big Scale desperately, but
I think the lady was an incredible carp.
Yeah, I never caught that.
Yeah, did you see it on the bank?
No, I don't think I did.
I think I've maybe thinking of like Richie's pictures of it from Horton. Looked,
I think it was 31, around about 31 in Longfield. Very pretty fish.
And the loss of Longfield provoked a period of sort of wandering for you, didn't it, really?
I got lost. Didn't know where to go. I desperately wanted to catch Big Scale, and I was devastated when I got thrown out. But as I said, I did break the rules, no question about that. But I thought they were stupid rules because we weren't causing anyone any grief. There was no truth for me in people leaving rods out. I never done it, and as far as I know, no one else done it.
So just to clarify, Rob got back into his bag, so they thought that he was still there when they returned and didn't bother to check him.
Well, no, they didn't check him because he was asleep. I think.
So they just didn't have his name
they would actually bang on, oh mate, wake up.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. They asked everyone else who he was, and everyone just
said, don't know.
Don't know him, mate, don't know him.
Yeah.
So they didn't bother going around. When they came round in the morning, I think they probably had it all planned. When they came round to see who was where, he'd gone.
Because he'd gone, they then definitely couldn't tell who he was.
No, they didn't know who he was.
You guys were still keeping tight-lipped about it.
Oh, so, where's matey over there? I don't know, mate.
Yeah, just went in the night.
Yeah, don't know who he is anyway.
So
lying through your teeth.
Yeah, so Rob owes you one for that one.
Probably, yeah. But I owe Rob because many a tale he told me about Save.
And Save was actually where you ended up sort of rekindling your passion for UK carp fishing.
Yeah,
but
I
before
drifted
that,
about.
We've got Johnson's and Dorchester Lagoon, haven't we?
Yeah.
Which were the two significant
places.
And at Johnson's, you found a social scene every bit as good as Longfield.
It was just the same. It was more slack, really, because Johnson's, you could use as many rods as you liked. Even the bailiff said, oh, you only got 3 rods out?
Yeah.
I only ever used 3 rods, but other people used, I have seen people there with 6.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a problem to anybody.
And you had the bricklayers right on the bank, as it still is
just
to this
up
day.
the road. That was on the road lake. We fished the railway lake, which is down the track.
I was actually there quite recently on that road in Ireland Lake, and the bricklayers is literally...
It's still there, is it?
It's like, there's a road, and then the pub, and then the lake on the other side. Yeah, mad.
And then when I went to Dorchester, I just heard about this. I don't know how I heard about it. I just heard about this water, and apparently there was a big common in it. And I said to my missus at the time, we go out there for the day and have a look round, see what it's like. We found it. Nice, lovely water. All trees growing in the water. It almost looked tropical. And I think I'd been there 15 minutes. And all of a sudden I thought, my God, look at that swimming now. I said to my missus, look at that. Common. I think it was £36, but in them days that was a monster.
And what else was in there? You didn't know, presumably.
There wasn't many carp in there, that's for sure. It was a very hard place to fish. Loads of tench, absolutely hordes of tench.
Which, if you've read Clive's book, you will know you're not the biggest fan of.
No.
But it seemed like probably a little bit almost like a holiday for you, because Oxford is not close to Horsham.
77 miles it was.
Yeah. And was the M40 around in that? It probably was by then, wasn't it?
I think it was. I think I used to go M25, M40. I used to go through Hendy-on-Thames.
Yes.
And then I'd park up outside, right at the back. Actually, there was a little lay-by, and you could just walk through the broken fence, and you're there.
Right, so you literally parked on the main road.
More or less. I think it was a lay-by just before a little chef.
Yeah.
So you had a little chef at the top of the lane, a lay-by, broken fence. You could walk through the fence and set your gear up.
And this was this pre-Marsh owning Orchid Lake?
Yeah, it was.
So was Orchid a club lake at the time? It's right next door to Dorchester.
It was right next door. I never ever ventured over there.
Yeah. Do you know what, Tobe? Pull us up. Yeah. See if you can find us a. So you're looking for a village called Berrinsfield in Oxfordshire. There is Dorchester Lagoon is now a sailing lake, but it is what Clive was talking about in terms of the topography and the islands and stuff. It is an incredible looking lake.
It is lovely lake. Yeah.
Obviously back then incredibly low stock.
It was.
I remember seeing a picture of a really lovely leather. A guy called Jerry O'Regan caught a big leather from there. Probably a little. It can't have been long after you were there.
Can't remember.
Because we're talking early 90s, are we by now? Mid 90s?
Yeah, it'd be 90, 91, something like that.
Yeah. And you did catch an incredible scaly one out of there.
Fully scaled.
Yeah.
That never come out very often. I actually spoke to a fellow who said he never even knew it existed.
Right.
And this was a local lad. But again, very very low stock water and hordes of tench. Hordes of them.
And how did you decide, were you able to locate fish every time? Because obviously you've gone from Longfield where you're going back in the secret no matter what, because that's what you've got going on, to a lake where you could be half a mile away from them.
I did fish other plots, but I'll be honest, the estate you mentioned,
Berrinsfield, yeah.
Yeah, we were told all along it was a problem estate, and you could hear cars at night screaming about, and we were always told keep an eye on your gear because it's quite messy place. So a lot of the time we always fished right by our car because we knew it was safer.
Yeah.
So rather than go down the other end of the lake, and if you look at the lake, some of the spots are so obvious where they got the islands and the trees hanging in. So we did concentrate a lot on that area. I did fish around the other side a couple of times and down the other end a couple of times, but
there you go, mate.
Never had any bites.
Yeah, go on, Clive. Let's get us in. So we're now looking at so it's the big lake with the islands in it, Tobe. That one, yeah. So just can you get us over the top of that, because it is I don't know if we're going to be able to see the topography, but it was one of those old dragline pits, I guess, Clive, with the bars, and I think are the islands part of the bar network.
Yeah.
So there we go. It's there. Can you bring us in over the top, Tobes? So I think you can kind of see.
Here's the road here. Here's the main road.
So that's the A4074, which goes between Oxford and Reading, and then on the far side you've got Dorchester Village, which is a lovely place, funnily enough, and then on the other side you've got Berrinsfield, which at the time I guess wasn't so nice, but that's a big sort of squarish rectangular pit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereabouts were you plotted up, Clive, for most of you?
I would say in between these bottom islands.
So so you were off this main road
sort of around that area there.
Yeah. So
around that area.
So
what you can't see there is that biggish island at the end, at the bottom there. There is water between that and the trees.
Okay, yes, yeah.
That's not land.
And could you get out onto those islands
at
the time? No.
No.
But you were using a dinghy, weren't you? Which is
I only done it once.
Right.
I only done it once.
But
you weren't supposed to.
Yeah. So were you attracted by the islands, presumably?
Yeah, the islands were obviously a good spot.
Yeah.
And if you saw anything, 9 times out of 10 it was round there.
And how big is that? It's got to be sort of 50, is it?
40, 50 acres, something like that.
Yeah. Mega pit and very historic, really.
And quite weedy.
Yeah.
Quite weedy. Not that bad, but not as bad as Longfield, but it was weedy-ish. But the tents used to drive us mad. I remember sitting there one day rolling probably 30 mil boilies, 25, 30 mil boilies to try and stop the tench. We still caught them.
Right.
We still caught them.
And did you lose a fish from there as well?
Yeah, I lost a couple of fish from there.
Which you don't want to be losing.
With definite carp.
Yeah.
Definite carp, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously Dorchester, fair play to you, mate. You stuck with it and you kept going back, despite the fact that it was hard, full of tench and a long way away.
It's the common.
Yeah. Because nationally there weren't many about.
No, and it was the common that I kept going back for because I knew it was there. I'd seen it.
Yeah.
Had I not seen it, I might have drifted away and gone somewhere else. But also, it was a cheap ticket. It was about 20 quid, Amy Anglers, I think they were called. So it wasn't a lot of money. And the Common, I kept going back because I knew the Common was there.
Did it come out in your time on the lake?
Never saw it.
No.
Never saw it at all.
It seemed a little bit like you, perhaps a bit more at home at Johnson's, though, because you ended up sort of doing a bit of time there. And actually, one of the carp you caught from there is just the most incredible fish.
Oh, the road lake fish.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know you fished the railway lake a lot, and actually, the fish that I think I first saw you with was that fish Spotty, which is in Rob's book, which is where I'd have seen it. But again, just two awesome fish. And I think you carried a picture in the book as well of Steve with a lovely one as well from there. Like
Steve Briggs.
Yeah. They were all different and all mega, weren't they?
Yeah, they were all dark mirrors, very dark, different shapes, probably all different strains. The road lake mirror was a real chance fish, to be honest, because I never had any intentions of going out there until I was actually standing on the road bank with Rob Malin one day. We were chatting, we were packing up to go home, and car come along. John Carver pulled up. Now I didn't know John at the time. Rob knew him. It was chatting. Hello mate, all right, yeah, as you do. I just caught two fish. He said, I've just been up the road lake, caught two fish. Oh, all right. Couldn't get out of him how big. It took a while, and then eventually he spilled the beans at both 30s, and I thought, wow,
brace 30s,
30 pounders, because in them days they were rare. So I packed up and I thought, I'll go and have a look at this road lake. I just drove past it, God knows how many times. So I had a little drive around, had a little look, had a few spots, climbed a little tree, saw a couple of fish and thought, I'll have a go here. This might be worth having a go. I think I did a couple of trips. It was very weedy. Had trouble finding spots. And then eventually I found a little spot, and I think it was the second or third trip I caught that scaly thing.
Which, I mean, it must be, for me, it's one of the best fish in the book. And there's lots of nice carp, but that one is just...
It's a stunner, yeah.
In a day when there weren't lots of big plated mirrors around.
Yeah.
But there are lots more now.
Yeah.
But that was a rare fish.
Yeah.
And actually
and a beautiful dropped head as well.
Yeah, slopey head. Yeah. And you caught that in a way that people nowadays would say is pretty big carp. Like you dinghied it out, you found probably one of the only presentable spots in the area, lowered down. Like, you know, that's...
Tiger nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
People were still doing that until quite recently on that lake, I guess. But because I've been recently, and actually it's the first time, although I've been over to the railway before, first time I'd set eyes on the road in Ireland, there's lots of new houses there. Kind of must have been quite bleak at the time. It must have been quite rough looking when you were there.
There was nothing there really.
Yeah.
You if you sat on not the stable side, this side, all you could see was the pub. The lights from the pub. That's all you could see. It was black.
Yeah, and given your predisposition for going for a beer, that must have been very welcome sight at times.
Tempting.
Because I actually one of the bits that made me laugh was when you'd gone up to the bricklayers with Rob, and Rob had been on pints of Pernod and Coke. I mean, I'll say it again, how you ever caught anything, mate? Because he wasn't so well after that, I guess.
No, I think he hurt his leg that night, jumped off a garage roof, done his leg in.
Why was he on the garage roof?
I've no idea. Pernod and Coke, I think that's the answer to that
one. But yeah, I think you say his knee had swollen up like a football in the morning. He had to go.
Yeah.
But that was the famous five, wasn't it?
It was.
Were you never ever sort of sat and thought, what are we doing?
No, it's a done thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, that was, if you like, the group of people that I was friends with. I wouldn't say I was fishing with them. I fished the same lakes as them. I did my own thing. I heard about Johnson's from Pete Jones. It was Pete Jones that told me about it, and it was really, went there again because there was a Pacific fish there, the leather.
Incredible.
It was massive fish. Yeah. I think that came out at £40 a couple of times. I saw it in the water. Second or third time, I thought, my God, I've got to come here and have a go for that. Never caught it. I don't think I ever saw it on the bank at all. It never got caught very often.
Just a mega, and actually that one lived a long time as well. That one was still around until 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, I'm told that the scaly one from the road lake came out at over £40 at one stage.
Really?
Yeah. Can you imagine that at £40?
Incredible fish. And Spotty though, the one you caught off the top.
Yeah.
Again, I can't even. It's sort of like a half lin, but with lots of scales around.
Tiny little like cornflake scales all over
like
it.
starbursty
Starburst,
type things,
yeah.
but mega shot of that.
Yeah.
You know, you must. When you look back at those fish, were you aware quite how special they were? Do you think?
No, not at all. I look back at them now and realise they were, but at the time, it was just another carp. Although it was a good carp, don't get me wrong, I went home extremely happy.
Yeah.
It was just another carp. It wasn't talked about. It was just another carp.
Yeah, and it's also amazing that, again, you're doing this sort of circuit, but anglers today don't have to travel far for their fishing generally, unless that you happen to live in the northwest. But even then, there are more big fish there now than ever. You guys were moving on a circuit that covered the whole of the south of England, really, and you're bumping into the same faces.
Yeah, just a little crew, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it must be quite nice in a way that.
Yeah, to turn up and see people, faces you know, friendly faces, that we're all trying to achieve the same thing. No one's getting in anyone's way. Everyone gets on. Yeah, they were special times, without a doubt.
And in terms of seeing these same guys, again, it must have meant that, yes, you're going fishing on your own and it's a solo activity, but you probably knew there was always kind of going to be some social edge to that as well.
Yeah. I didn't always go to the pub. Some nights I said, no, I'm staying on my rods.
Yeah. Did you generally catch?
No.
When you
No.
I'll tell you, I think I mentioned it earlier, but again, respect the fact that you guys, you just carried on through the winter regardless.
Yeah, and they were all low stock waters.
And it's, ridiculously hard lakes.
Yeah, and I did a few nights at Johnson's in the winter, and I have got pictures at home of snow, ice everywhere. Woke up one morning on the road lake and had to break the ice to get my rigs out and go home. It was, and I now look at it and think, I couldn't do that now. I could not do that now.
No, I mean,
even though the equipment today is far better than what it was them days, bivvies, bed chairs, sleeping bags, things that you take nowadays to do night fishing. I couldn't do it, to be
I
honest.
think you talk in one point about pegging sacks to the side of your brolly to keep the weather out.
I think I left my sides at home,
Yeah,
so I made some sides up with some sacks and some pegs.
just happened to have a few wooden pegs, clothes pegs in
I
the
used to
kit,
always
but-
take the clothes peg with me. I don't know why. I think I took 3 or 4 just to hang things up, because in them days you had a brolly, not a bivvy, just to hang things from the pegs, and I used to use the peg to hang things up.
When you look back at that, the slightly roughing it element of it, because presumably the bed chairs would have been around, but not very good.
They weren't as
potentially.
comfortable as they are now, no.
Do you look back and think, yeah, that was great, we were doing our own thing, or do you look back and think, oh, how did we do that?
Bit of both, I think. Bit of both. Yeah.
And would that be in a sort of golden era in your carp fishing, Clive? That kind of Johnson's, Longfield, Dorchester, that kind of.
If you asked me to pick an era which was the most enjoyable, they're all enjoyable, every single one of them. But I would have to go back to probably the early 80s when I discovered the hare, when the hare come out, and I was fishing a little water called the Haven close to me. We were only catching doubles. It was the first time I ever used boilies. And for me, they were exciting. That was the exciting time because there was no tackle around. You had to either make it yourself, scrounge it off someone, or basically go without. I remember doing nights in the 80s. We never had a bed chair. Just had a little fold up and try to sleep on it.
A chair.
Just a chair. No sleeping bag. Just to put a coat over you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never did a lot of nights during that period, but we did the odd one and froze to death most of the time, even in the summer. But then we were young.
Of course. So when you did finally come out of the wilderness, to backtrack a little bit from your lost period, if you like, your Johnsons and your Dorchester, was it Save that brought you out in terms of the English fishing?
Yeah, I had a season where I had far too many tickets. I think I still had my Johnson's ticket. I still had my Amy ticket. I think there's a picture in my book actually of a pile of tickets that I had one year. I was going from I was fishing Hive Lagoon. I did venture over to Colmere, which was next to it.
Yep.
I fished at Hive Lagoon a little bit, not a lot. I had a couple of doubles out of there. I was fishing Berry-Hill Lake. I basically nearly disappeared up there.
Berry Hill's a little closer to your home, isn't it?
It's closer to home to me. It's Dorking. It's probably 12 miles away. Lovely lake. It's closed in September. Finished.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
Bit of history gone forever.
What, in private hands now? And
A private buyer's bought the house and the lake apparently, and he doesn't like fishing.
Right.
So whatever's going to happen to that, I have no idea. Don't know what's going to happen to the fishing there. No idea.
And actually, interesting you should say that the fish you talked about having caught from Hythe is a mirror, a linear as well. So it'd be really fascinating to know if that one was still around, because.
Well, I drive past that, and I've often wondered what is actually in there, because I don't think I ever saw anyone fishing it. Hythe Lagoon.
No.
And me and my mate Kev went up there a few times, fished it, had a few doubles. Never saw anything big, but never saw anyone else there fishing it. And I often wonder, is there still fishing it today? I don't think you're allowed to fish it. You're not allowed to fish Culmere, obviously. And yeah, I realised I was disappearing up my own backside. I was going from here, there, all over the place, and I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I'd had enough of going to Dorchester. I think the travelling was doing my head in. Although, in the scheme of things, it's not that far. It was in them days. And then I'd already had a ticket for Savay. I actually bought a ticket for Savay, and I believe it's 1982.
The syndicate had kind of been going long at that point.
I can't remember, to be honest.
Like
Sadly, I'm one of these people that keep everything. I've got every ticket I've ever had. I've got every rod licence I've ever had. I've got them all in my drawer upstairs in my little spare room. I've got piles of them. And I know I joined Savay in 1982. I still got the ticket. I think actually there's a picture of it in the book. I think it cost me £20. The first time I went there, I got lost. And it just blew me away. The size of it was like an ocean to me. I'd never fished anywhere or seen anywhere as big as that. I bumped into Peter Broxup, who gave me a little warning, and I remember thinking, you wouldn't want to mess with him. And basically I looked at it and thought, that's not for me, that. Disappeared. Went on the so-called circuit waters at the time, Longfield Johnson's. Got talking to Rob Maynard a lot. Spent a lot of time with Rob. And he was telling me all the stories. Then, of course, his book come out, Tiger Bay, and I was sort of reading that, and I thought, yeah, I quite fancy that. That'll do me. So I bought myself a day ticket, and 34 years later, sadly, I had to drop out.
I mean, what we should say is that your day ticket, I guess, despite the difficulties of day fishing, you did decide to grit your teeth and go for it.
I wanted a ticket. I went on there as a day angler. I think it would have been 1990, I'm guessing here, 1990, 91, something like that, 92 maybe. And I'd sort of gotten over the fact that it was so big. And I thought, I like it here, it's nice. The lads were great. Even as a day ticket angler, I couldn't believe how helpful they were. Secrets, none, which I wasn't used to. Everywhere I'd fished was like all hush-hush. I even went to some places where people never talk to you. I visited waters where you walk around and you think, all right, lads. I went to a little water in Sussex called Vinatro, which is very, very well known. It's produced a lot of big fish. And I remember this. I went there to have a look, not that far from my house, about 50 minutes. Had a little look, and I saw two lads sitting on their bivvy, and I thought, I'm going to have a chat with them, you know. As I got down a path, they disappeared. Both shot in their bivvy. And I thought, really? Is that what it's about? I walked past them, coughed, sort of hung around, maybe they'll, no. Walked round the other side, I see them both get out, both chatting to one, and I thought they obviously didn't want to talk to me. And I thought, that's not for me, not this type of fishing. When I went to Savay, completely different. Everyone was so helpful, so open, telling you spots, you don't want to cast there, that's rubbish, you want to put one there. And I thought, yeah, I like this will do me. But I realised very quickly to get in the syndicate, one, I'd have to be lucky with people dropping out, because no one dropped out. And two, I'd have to show my face. And that's what I did. I think for 3 or 4 seasons, I never went anywhere else. I just slept in my car, and that was tough, sleeping in your car.
I mean, how old were you at that point?
Well, shall we say
Let's
1990?
Yeah.
I was born in 55, so work that out. So I was 35. So I was 35.
So
I was
just about young enough to cope with sleeping in cars.
I never had a problem sleeping in the car. It was a bit uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
I could cope with it. I couldn't do it now.
Now, were the lads as welcoming to everyone on the day ticket, or do you think you got special treatment?
No, I don't think I got any special treatment at all. There weren't many day anglers. On my 3 or 4 years of doing days on Savay, I probably only bumped into 3 or 4 people regular, maximum. Very few day anglers at all.
But you had, if I'm right, met Roger and Kerry before.
I met Roger and Kerry in France.
Yeah. And talk to me about, because obviously we don't have the luxury of talking to Roger now, you know, since sadly passed away.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what he was like, because everyone says he was the supreme sort of character.
Yeah, he squeaked when he talked, and he was probably the most funniest bloke I've ever met in my life without knowing it. He never tried to be funny, he just was funny. He was scruffy as you like. He spent more money on beard and clothes, and he actually said one day, I don't know whether I can actually do it like he did it. There was me, Barry Duck, Roger and Bruce Ashby. We're all sitting on a coal bank. We was fishing. I'm not sure whether I was a guest, actually. I think I was a guest. I might have been a guest of Roger's. And Bruce said to Roger, you spend more money on clothes, on fishing and beer than you do clothes, because Roger had this old coat that he wore. Every time you saw him, Roger had this coat on.
Was this the £5 chub? The coat he called his £5 chub?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. And Bruce said to him, you know, your coat, Roger. And Roger actually said, beer is more important than clothes. And I can't do it like Roger did, but me and Barry Duck, we were on the floor. We just couldn't stop laughing. And that's what Roger was like. He was just a character.
But welcoming. Clearly, he'd met you in France.
I met him in France, and I just said to him, I think I had actually bought a ticket for Saturday. And I said, oh, I bought a ticket. Oh, I'm a bailiff, he said. When you come home, give me a ring, and I'll sort you out a trip. I thought, great, I have some of that. And the first trip I went on, I think Roger had a 25. And we spent more time in a pub than we did fishing. That was Roger, but we were there as guests, so he did what Roger did. And I thought, yeah, I like it here. This is right up my tree. And they were just so accommodating, you know.
To the point where I remember a couple of mentions in the book of people actually helping you to carry your kit along the bank.
Yes,
like syndicate members.
Unbelievable. I think the first time I did a guest with Roger, and I never had a barrow. I don't think there was barrows around them days. Everyone used a wheelbarrow, but I never even had that. And Roger said, we're going to One Down. Well, where's One Down, Roger? Oh, it's right around the other end, he said. It's a mile and a half away from the car park. So I had a rucksack, my rod holder, my chair, my bed chair. I thought, I'm going to have to come back. No, we'll all carry it for you. They all carried it me. I got halfway down the bank, another syndicate member come, oh, give us that, I'll carry that for you. Where you going? I'm going out there with Roger. I'll carry that for you. It's like, it's unbelievable.
Because when you, in my mind's eye, turning up on Saturday, you'd kind of be expected to be a second-class citizen on the days, but that's not how you found it.
Not at all. I found it complete opposite, which is what part of the reason why I loved it so much, I think.
Yeah.
The other side to it is, as a day angler, Peter Brock's up, bless him, loved him. He never spoke to you.
Right.
As a day angler. He'd always go, all right, son, any luck, and walk past. Never stop, never have a cup of tea, nothing. But he was a lovely man. I got to know him very well once I joined the syndicate, and once you got in the syndicate, he would spend time with you. But as a day angler, no.
And he very much, his character was, you know, it moulded what that lake was, I guess.
He made it what it was.
Yeah. So Peter, I think it's quite a nice story out from the book about when you found out you were going to get your ticket. And in fact, take us back, because obviously you didn't get your ticket to first of all.
The first year, what happened at the end of the season, I think everyone went up the pub last night, and I was up there as a day ticket here. I actually caught one on my last day there, 27 pounder. So that was the talk at the time. He's had a 27 pound a day, and they were all telling me, oh, you'll be in next year, especially Albert Robb. You'll be in next year, you'll get a ticket, this, that and the other. He's going to drop out, you'll get a ticket. And of course I fell for that. I'm thinking, yeah, I'll get a ticket. So all close season, I'm waiting for a phone call. I never got it. I was gutted. Never got a phone call. Then I found out Tony Moore got in. Now I knew Tony from Dorchester days, because I met him at Dorchester. Lovely fella, got on fine with him. And I thought to myself, I must have done something wrong here, because I've never seen Tony Moore on the syndicate as on a day ticket, never seen him. I've been going up there religiously for 3 or 4 years. He's got in, I ain't. I thought, I must have done something wrong. Obviously, Peter's seen something that he doesn't like. And then I thought, well, I can't have done, because he wouldn't renew my day ticket, surely. So I applied for my day ticket that year, got it. as normal. And then at the end of that year, I was thinking, I might have a chance this year. And I actually went as a guest of Bob Copeland. And the story is I was fishing on a coal bank with Bob. Bob had a couple. I blanked, normal. And then Peter come over in a boat. It was the last day of the season. And we were packing up. And I'm standing, that was in the days when the bank was quite bare, the trees, the undergrowth wasn't like it is now. You could see quite a way out the path. And I'm slowly packing my gear away, and I've looked round and I've seen Peter heading towards me. And I remember thinking, oh no, what have I done wrong here? I've done something wrong here. Then I thought, well, hang on a minute. Peter don't talk to dating anglers, so why is he coming down here to talk to me? He's obviously coming. And I then thought, go on, he's going to ask me. I know he is. I don't know why, I just knew. And he just come up as he did. All right, son. I said, Peter, thanks very much for letting me do a couple of nights. He said, you still want a ticket? I went, I'd love a ticket, Pete. He said, right, I'll tell you now, don't listen to all these other idiots. They don't know what they're on about. You're in next year. Take it from me. And I just went berserk. I just, at the top of my voice, I was screaming and shouting.
Once he'd gone?
No, I did it in front of him. And he actually said to me, right, I'm telling you now, keep it quiet. I don't want you telling anybody. You've heard it from me. You're in next year, but don't go blabbing about it. Mm. So I went up the pub. I think it was that night. I think that was the night before. I think we had one more night. So I go up the pub with all of them. They're all up there, and I am itching to tell them, but I can't. I'm thinking, no, I can't jeopardise my ticket, because if it gets back to Peter that I've been blabbing about it, I won't get one. Mm. And then halfway through the close season, got a letter through the door. Here it is. And I think at the time it was £240. I was amazed, and that was it. I was a toad.
You were on the toad rotor?
I was a toad.
In your mind, were you always going to be a toad?
I would have taken any rotor.
Yeah.
But hindsight, obviously, is a one. Listen, I haven't got anything against the loonies. I know loads of them. But I'm glad I was a toad, because most of the lads on my rotor were great. I didn't know a lot of loonies. I knew a handful of them. They were good lads. But the toads, I think, were a bit special.
Well, history would suggest that the toads is the rotor to be on. If you like a character there, certainly.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Were any of the old school still on there when you, with the likes of Roger and Carey and Albert still around?
Albert was still around. Albert dropped out, I think, when it changed hands, when Tom Banks bought it. I think that's when Albert dropped out. So I was on it for a few years when Albert was there. Roger was still there. So
Albert Rump is a character that comes up in everyone's work, everyone's books. You know, you can't escape him if you were in that area at that time. In fact, he still fishes down there to this day in that area, doesn't he?
I'm told he's moved.
Right.
I've been told that he's moved to Hayling Island. I don't know if that's true. I haven't spoke to Albert for a long time.
What was he like at the time?
Brilliant. Such a character, so funny. It was a bit like Roger, but a wind-up merchant. He would get you going on all sorts, or try to get you going. I got on really well with Albert, and ended up doing a few trips to France with him and Bob and that, and we had great times, great laughs. It was fantastic, and he was such a funny man, Albert. But a wind-up merchant.
It's like you couldn't go to a lake with that many big characters on it. You know, you had this kind of huge presence of Peter Broxup, and then, you know, Albert and Roger. You know, look, they must have been dynamite together, those two.
Oh, I would have thought so, yeah. I don't think I spent much time with both of them, because Albert was a loony, so he was on the other rotor to me, but I quite often see Albert on changeover day. He'd always come round. And Roger was a bailiff, so Roger could go when he liked. Yeah. So Roger used to turn up on both rotors.
And obviously Albert had caught the record brace, you know, in living memory at that point, hadn't he? So obviously his influence on that lake was
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about the atmosphere on Savay, and paint us a little bit of a picture about what that lake was like at the time.
Good time to throw that up.
Yeah, there's a picture. So where are we there?
That's the shallows. I think that's that's a shallow swim. That's the Long Island in the long.
So that's what the rice club
that's
used to
been
have.
Rice Slip Island, they used to have that. When I first went on a day ticket, you would quite regularly get rice slip anglers on there. You'd get bailiffs on there fishing it. And as I've said in the book, for me, Savay was easier then than it is now, despite the fact that the The rods have got better. The reels have got all your equipment's got better because there was a presence on the island. They had always forced the fish out a little bit. When it changed hands, and rice lip were basically thrown off, and Peter's bailiffs disappeared. No one went on the wrong island, and I think the fish knew that. They regularly just used to patrol up and down there. A lot of them spots for me were way out of my casting range, so I never bothered with them. You know, there's people on Savay that can cast to the moon, but I couldn't, so I stayed clear of them because I knew my limitations, and I just thought I'm wasting my time in that swim. But the atmosphere was always great, friendly, and you were fishing Savay, and you had a chance of catching Wimbledon or the small-tailed lever or Lionels or a few of the other big ones.
I mean, when you first got on there must have been even more of those original sort of leany strain fish.
They were still there, yeah. A lot of them are gone now.
Most, I guess.
I'm not sure about the small-tailed lever. I don't think anyone's found it dead. I know Wimbledon died.
Yeah. But they were were they even second generation fish for Savay?
I think they come from Claremont.
Yeah. So not those original Mike Wilson leany fish.
They're probably all gone, I should think.
Yeah. Thick head and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're all. I'm pretty sure they're all gone.
Were they there when you were fishing it though?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, you started the sort of spectre of these.
Yeah.
The dam advert.
Yeah,
you know,
they were
like
there,
that.
but it's never been overstocked. It's always been understocked. It's a big water.
70 acres, is that right?
78 acres, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's always been sparsely populated by carp, but that's quite good because it's not a runs water. Just a great water to fish. I absolutely loved it there.
Clive, can I ask you something, mate? Because for me, I've done a few of these now, and Savay is the one place, if you like, that when everybody talks about it, there seems to be some kind of, I don't know, captivation. People are captivated by it. It you know, someone like me that's not, you know, you're a beginner angler, whatever. What is it about that place? I've heard my dad talk about it. I've heard Simon, who's fished there, talk about it.
I think initially,
if you could describe it to someone who's not fished before, why it's so special, what is it about
I'd say
it?
Peter Broxer.
Right, okay.
One man.
And why is that?
He was a special man.
Okay.
He didn't take any prisoners. You knew that. You knew if you got caught breaking the rules, doesn't matter who you were, you're gone. People didn't break rules.
What's it say on the ticket? Rules?
Whatever Peter says there are, no exceptions. And that was it. But he was a lovely man. Once you got to know him, what's the thing? He didn't take fools lightly, Peter. Simple as that. He never wanted, although I worked in a trade, a lot of times he said, "Oh, can you get me this?" "I'll sort it out for you, Peter." "Yeah, I'll get it. How much?" "Oh, no, I'll get it." "No, you wouldn't have to pay for it."
Would you say he was an old school character?
Yeah.
Like the sort of person that you would have met in London, like in the day when you were moving in those circles?
Yeah.
Or?
And his mate, John Harry, is just the same. And John's still there, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the people made it for me. Oh, it was a great fishery, lovely place to fish. You never ever heard, "Oh, mate, you've cast over me." It just didn't happen there because the swims are so spaced apart for a start, plus the calibre of angler that went, it just never happened. And I think the anglers made it. As I said earlier, from my very first visits, I was made to feel welcome, which on other waters I fished, you weren't. The people were great. The fishing was hard, but great, rewarding. When you caught one, you felt, didn't matter how big it was a Savay carp. And I think, to me, the people made it, the anglers. I loved all the toads. They were great people. We had smashing times. Right the way through my 30 years on the toad rotor, the rotor changed some years quite considerably. And when I look back, I've still got all the rotor sheets at home. When I look at back when I got in to what it was when I dropped out, I think there was only 3 people on my rotor that were there when I started. So it's changed considerably, but all these newer, younger anglers who can cast to the moon, some of them, they were great lads. And they all seem to get the ethos of what Savay was about without anybody explaining to them. They just sort of fell into it. That's how it is. That's what you do. That's what you don't do, without having to put it down in law. It was just one of them places.
And what about the lake itself? Everything you could hope for in a carp lake, presumably.
Everything. You couldn't wish for anything else, really. Weed, bars, lovely secret spots, big open swims, lots of big casting. You could cast in the edge in a few spots. I like a bit of margin fishing, me. Had everything, had absolutely everything. And I was absolutely gutted to drop out. But
so it always struck me as being a lake of contrast as well, because you've got that kind of cottage bay, which could be a tiny little gravel pit of its own.
It's
very pretty.
4 lakes on its own, I used to think.
Okay.
Cottage Bay, North Bay, Canal Bank, Colne.
And
So for me, I always thought it as like four lakes.
And is it the Canal Bank where you're very isolated? Is that, or is
No,
that
that's
Colne
Colne
Bank? Colne Bank.
That's a Colne Bank.
It sounded like the sort of place that you could quite happily spend a few days almost without seeing anyone.
Not a soul. You wouldn't see a soul sometimes. I mean, a lot of times when I fished it, as I said earlier, I only ever fished in a week. I spent quite a few times at Savay when there was nobody there, even in the height of the... For instance, when I caught Wimbledon, I was the only person on the lake, and that was in August. There's no one else there. That's madness. You couldn't do that today. It'd be Ramo swims, people would be in all the swims. Obviously, Tom Banks has taken it over, and fair play to Tom. When Tom took it over, I actually thought, maybe it's time to leave. But quickly, Tom, one way or another, got through to us that nothing was going to change. And I thought, well, that'll do me. And fair play to Tom, nothing's changed. It's still the same. The rules are the same. It's still great.
Yeah, obviously Pete's loss was a massive one for the lake and for you guys as well, I guess.
Yeah, monster. Absolutely monster. I was horrified when it happened. Lockie phoned me up and said, you never believe Peter Broxup's died. I was shocked, horrified. He was an inspirational fellow, really, to be honest. And although he wasn't one of these blokes that he put his arm around. He wasn't like that, Pete. He was an hard nut, you know. But he was a lovely fella.
And a good angler as well, because obviously he'd caught the Wimbledon the night before he died. Is that right?
Yeah, apparently, apparently that was the last fish he caught. He actually told me on I think the week before we went up. I was with Bruce. We went up a pre-season meeting that we always had, and we were out on the shallows, and we heard Peter coming on the lawnmower. Stopped, had a chat, and I actually said to him, I think that Wimbledon had come out the previous winter at £49. I think one of the loonies, I can't remember the fella's name now. But anyway, he caught it at 49 something, and we all thought it could be £50 that fish. And I remember saying to Pete, could be £50 that Pete this year. He went, yeah. And he said, I'd love to catch that. And I went, you must have had it, didn't you? He said, I've never had it at £40. Oh, I said, oh, well, good luck with that. And that was the last fish he actually handled. So that's very strange.
His island, is that very much retained as it was when...
All his stuff is still out there.
Right.
I gave Peter a tracker bivvy many years ago, a great big thing that I didn't want. It was a demonstration thing and it was massive. And I said to him, you can have it. I don't want it, Pete. I'm going to throw it away if you don't want it. Oh, I'll have it, he said. He put it up on his... And as far as I know, it was still there a couple of years ago in the same spot, never been moved. All these little sheds are there, everything is still there. Out of respect, no one's gone over there.
Right, okay. Sort of the island's been retired, if you like.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, Savay, you know, we almost can't gloss over the fact you were there for one of the biggest tragedies that big carp fishing's ever seen.
Yeah.
How do you sort of, this was when 2 men drowned.
Yeah.
How do you get past that?
Tough, mate.
Yeah.
Very tough. Again, it was a period where I thought, I've had enough. I've got to leave. Can't be handling that. What happened was we was on a work party, normal work party. I think it was May Day. So the weather was nice, quite warm. We were shoveling bags of gravel out of the car park area into bags, and Peter had a boat and Keith Selleck had a boat, and we were putting them in a boat and they were taking them down the canal bank and dropping them off. We went over to Peter's Island, as we always did. His wife Sue made a load of sandwiches. We had one beer, because I know after people said, they were all pissed. We weren't. We had one beer, one little bottle of French beer that Peter gave us. We had a load of sandwiches, cups of tea, and then we went back. I was in that boat, the same boat, 5 minutes previous. And I have to say, if I'd have been in that boat with them others, I don't think I'd be here today. Because we all had quite heavy clothing on. I had a jumper, trousers, big heavy boots. They dropped me off and 3 or 4 others, and they went back. Keith went back to get the other lads, and we went up into the car park to start filling the bags up. And then we had just heard a load of screaming and shouting. What's going on? What's happening? We all trotted down there to see what was going on, and there was no boat to be seen. Keith Selleck was over there in the water, 50 yards out, and Lockie was in the water over there, holding on to Clive Rigsby. Unbeknown to me at the time, Clive Rigsby couldn't swim. Basically, I can't speak for Martin because it's Martin, but Martin had to make a choice, basically, to get himself back or drown. Unfortunately, Clive couldn't swim, so Martin got back to the bank. No one else on the bank could swim. Now, I can swim, but I'm not Mark Spitz. I'm not brilliant. But Keith Selleck was obviously struggling, and he was about, 30 yards away, trying to swim to the bank. I took my clothes off as quick as I could, down to my skidders. I jumped in off the end of what is now the secret swim. There's a lump of concrete. It's quite deep right there. I jumped straight in. I probably swam out, 10 yards. I probably got a couple of yards away from Keith out. At the time, I didn't know it, but when I think back of it now, I think he was already unconscious, I think he'd probably been under a couple of times. I went to grab him, and all of a sudden, he was gone. In an instant, he just disappeared in front of my eyes. I'm now in 12, 14 foot of water. I'm now panicking, frantic, swimming around in circles, trying to look for him, trying to feel for him, and lost cause, to be honest. And then I started to get cramp in my leg. They're all shouting at me, and obviously Peter's heard all this. He's come up in his boat, and I thought, well, I've got to get back. Got back to the thing. Peter helped me out, and then the rest is history, really. And sadly, they both died. And I found it very tough for a few weeks to get over that. In fact, I probably never got over it, to be honest.
No, it's not the sort of thing that you can.
No,
it's ever going to leave you.
You never ever forget that.
Yeah. That
you're looking at someone, and all of a sudden, boom, in one gloop, they're gone. Very sad day. So, did Save change on that day for everyone that was there, do you think? I don't think Martin ever went back. I mean, I know Martin had a problem before when he got run over at the pub one night. Bloke knocked him over. That was bad for Martin, broke his leg. And Martin actually, when Peter died, Martin hadn't actually been back to the lake. I know he hadn't, but when he phoned me and said, Peter's died, Martin's words to me were, that lake is jinxed. And I know Martin never ever went back.
No. But I guess your take on it as someone who fished it after the accident and beyond Peter's time, would you disagree with Martin presumably on that? Because...
Well, it was jinxed for Martin.
Yeah.
It was just a sad thing. Listen, I know none of us had life jackets on. Excuse me. Would you do that today? Probably not. We've all done it. We've all been out. I've been out in boats on deep waters without a light. I wouldn't do it now. Yeah. But we've all done it, and no one ever thought anything about. And apparently what happened was Keith just opened. It was an old wooden punt. Keith opened up the motor to just make a move, and Martin told me the front just dipped. And as soon as it dipped, he said the boat just filled up in water in seconds. And he said 1 minute it was there, the next minute it's gone, completely gone. He said, and four of us were all swimming around but no water.
The maddest thing for those of us who've not been in such tragic circumstances is that it was May, and obviously the coldness of the water must have had an effect. Yeah, it was in May. In May, although it was very warm temperature-wise outside, the water was actually really bitterly cold. Yeah, which I found out very quickly. Yeah. And how little endurance you have in that cold water is. We've all heard about that. I don't even know how long I was in it, to be honest. Probably no more than 2 or 3 minutes. But it was enough. How did you find a way past all that to carry on fishing the lake? Well, I never went for quite a long time, to be honest. I kept talking to my wife at home about, I don't know whether I can go back and this, that. And to be fair, she kept on at me. You don't want to go anywhere else, do you? I said, no, I don't want to go anywhere else. Well, you need to go back then. I said, well, yeah. Anyway, cut a long story. In the end, I eventually said, you know what, I will go back and I'll fish for them lads. And I did. And the story is, I actually caught 3 carp. And I said at the time, that one's for Clive, that one's for Keith, and that one's for me. And it sort of lifted a burden off my shoulder, so to speak, really. And I never looked back after that. Every time I went to Save, after that, and every time I went to Save when Peter died, I always paid homage to 3 of them. I always walked to Peter's gate, give him a salute, tapped on the tree, because there was a little tree in the car park planted to them.
And yeah, it's just, I got over it eventually. Time is a healer, innit? But it's not something.
No, not something you ever truly get over, I guess.
No, I don't think you do. No.
But on slightly, on much happier sort of note, I do want to talk to you about that one trip when you stalked the Wimbledon and the small tail leather, because we've got a few pictures to illustrate this as well. But for those of us who are listening, talk to us a little bit about that trip and how you came to stalk two of the best, really.
Well, I think I turned up midweek, as I always did. It was 2 days prior to my birthday. I think I was 55. I was fishing in the secret swim. There was only, John Harry was on his Alcatraz plot, which is sort of North Bay, end of North Bay area. Matt Bennett was another toad. He was in one down. And another bloke called Roger Leach, who we actually called a radish. I'm not sure how he got that name, but that's how we called him. He was on the lake. Now, the radish lived up the road, walking distance, and John Harry lived up the road, not far. John used to go home every day for his dinner, and so did the radish. I phoned up. We're now talking an era where we had mobiles and stuff like that. So I spoke to Matt and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" He said, "We got a cafe if you like." I went, "Yeah, all right, we got a cafe." That was another thing we did at Savay. We all, most mornings, most days, come 11, when you thought bite time's gone, we reel in, we got the cafe, have a little feed up, go back to the lake. So we arranged to meet in the car park, and just before we went out the cafe, Matt said to me, "Let's just go and have a look on the road bank, see if there's anything going on." I went, "Yeah, all right, yeah." So we walked along the road bank, had a little walk along. All of a sudden, got to it. No, I never had any sunglasses on me. And Matt's gone, "Oh my God, look, there's Wimbledon there." I thought he was joking. I thought he was taking a piss, hadn't he? I said, "Let's get his glasses." I put his glasses on. I went, "My God, oh my God, look at that." I said, "Not only Wimbledon, there's another one there, look." "Oh, that's a small tail leather." So we thought, wow, what's that? So we started to have a look in the margins, and we found 2 little spots. One in what was called the gap swim, which was overgrown. So,
which swim's this, Clive, on the screen?
Well, that's the very end swim. The gap swim,
yeah,
which was the one on, I think, in Hutchie's book, is the one next door. But that was, by this time, that was overgrown. It hadn't been fished, so it wasn't fishable. So this is, I suppose they call it the pads. It's the last one on the road bank, basically.
Yeah.
There was a little spot in the pad swim, and when me and Matt saw it, we thought, "Oh, that looks." It was about the size of a bucket lid. That looks like that's been cleaned off by a fish, that. So we chucked a bit. We both had pockets. Every time we went to Savay, whenever you walked in here, you always had a bit of bait in your pocket. There's the spot. So we baited the first spot. Then I walked out to the end spot, the pad swim, and I looked in the margin, and the water was very low that year for some reason. It was probably 2 foot down. I looked down and I thought, look at the size of that spot. That's a big spot. That is really clear. So I put a bit of bait on it, crumbed a few boilies up, chucked it out, and we just stood about for 10 minutes. All of a sudden, there's Wimbledon there. He's on the first spot. He's tipped up. He's having a few bits of bait. He's come up to the second spot. He's had another few bits of bait. Now, I'm a bit of a dilemma now, because I'm standing there with another member, and I'm sure we're both thinking, these are catchable, but who's going to win the race to fish for them? And all of a sudden, Matt looked at me and went, "My rods are 1.5 miles away, son. Fill your boots." I went, "Oh, I don't need telling twice." I said, "But let's go to the cafe first, because I'll tell you what, they'll still be here when we get back. There's no reason why they would go. There's no one else there." This was 11 o'clock, 11:30. So basically, we went out to the cafe, and just before we left up the cafe, we walked along the road bank, and the radish come along. We saw him walking towards us. I looked at Matt and went, "Oh no, that's a problem now, isn't it? Because let's just go to the cafe. He won't see them." Luckily, he never spotted them. How he never spotted them, I don't know, but he didn't. So we went out to the cafe, had a bit of grub, come back. Matty come round, had a little look. He said, "Yeah, look, they're still there, still here." So we got some more bait. We spent it, and I said to Matt, "Don't put any bait in that little spot, because you can't really fish it. You couldn't get your rod up because there was too many trees." I said, "Let's concentrate on this little area here in front of the pad swim." So we put a few bits of bait on it. All of a sudden, small tailed leathers come in. I've now got one rod round there, a pocket full of bait. I forgot my lead. luckily, in my pocket, I had funny enough, a Korda feature finding lead. I thought, that'll do, I'll put that on. So I made a little rig up, put that on. I waited and waited and waited. And I had my dog with me at the time, little Zola was with me. And at one stage, we had 3 fish on one little area, Wimbledon, small-tailed leather, and a trophy turned up. Now, the trophy was a bit of a pig of a fish. If it saw bait, it ate it. Although I never caught the trophy, Jordan Wesley, for instance, caught it God knows how many times. I think it followed Jordan around a lake. So we're standing there watching, and I never had a rigging. My rod was here. 3 fish had come in, and all of a sudden a trophy's appeared from nowhere. And he's gone, well, if you're not having it and you're not having it, I am. And he just pushed his way in and went, boss, had the lot. And we was like amazed. Cleared off. Never saw him again. So Matt said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'll put a rig down there now. So I put a little rig on. I think I can't remember I used a whole boilie for a small tail lever. I can't remember. But anyway, I put a bait down. It was virtually lowering it onto about 3 foot of water. That was it. Waited and waited, 10 minutes. All of a sudden, here comes a small tail lever. There he is. Look, there he is. Oh, go on. Let's pick my bait up. Roared off of it. I've landed it. I've hooked it, landed it. On the bank, it misbehaved unbelievably bad. Took me a good 5 minutes before it would behave itself.
There we go. There's
That's
a
that
picture
one.
of it. Yeah.
That's why I got such a wet shirt. It was just an animal on the bank. Wouldn't behave itself. Anyway, I got
You can see from its face, Clive, in a funny way, the way its eyes looking fiercely downwards like that. It almost looks pissed off.
I think it was very, very angry.
Yeah.
Anyway, while I'm doing that, Matty said to me, oh, by the way, son, he said, Wimbledon's still on the spot eating. I thought, really? I've got to get this back. John Harry took the pictures. So anyway, John Harry's took the pictures. We put it back. Matt said, right, I'll go back to swim now. I'll leave you to it. Matt cleared off. I spent the rest of that afternoon watching what Wimbledon did. I did have a bait in the water for a while. I couldn't get him to pick anything up at all. I've never seen a fish act so deliberately slow in everything he'd done. Even when he come up, a couple of times he come up from the depth, and almost looking at me, come right up. And I thought, my God, look at the size of that. It was just mind-blowing. But I couldn't get him to pick a bait up at all. I tried all afternoon. I got to about 7. My little dog now, he's letting me know he's hungry. So I thought, oh, you know what? I'll go back to me plotting the secret. I think he'll still be here tomorrow. So I went back to me spot for the night. Celebrated what was going to be my birthday the next day with a couple of cans because I'd caught that, 40 odd pound, lovely. And the next morning, strangely, I got up the next morning and I thought, I'll just go and have a look first. So I went round and the light wasn't good enough. I got on my knees and I was trying to peer in the water and I couldn't see any bait. I couldn't quite see the bottom and I couldn't work out whether the bait had gone or not. It was too early, so I thought, I'll come back later. So I went back to me swim. I made a cup of tea and I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I thought to myself, what if someone else turns up now and walks along the road bank and sees what I've seen? I need to get round there now. So in a panic, I reeled my rods in quickly, got my water butt, raced round there with my barra, put my water butt in the thing. I thought, that's it, reserved to swim. Went back up the calf that day, saw John Harry and said to John, I'm going to calf and when I come back, I'm going to get round there. And he's still there. I said, John's words were to me, when you've caught it, give us a ring because I'll be at home at dinner. So when you've caught it, give us a ring, I'll come down and pictures. And I laughed at John and went, yeah, all right, mate, yeah. Went up the calf, come back, totally on my own now. Matt's gone to work, Radish is at home, John Harry's gone home for dinner. I think it took me best part of 4 or 5 hours before he'd pick up my bait. And I had to go down to 2 halves of boilie. I had 4 whole baits, like one there. And they were there since I dropped them in the morning. And I would crumb a few boilies up, drop a bit down there and a bit down there. He would come in and he was so deliberate in what he'd done, very, very slow. And I always looked at him and thought, he's in control, not me. He knows what he's doing. He'd have a little munch, he'd drift off. Or sometimes he'd come in, he'd have nothing at all. He'd drift off. 10 minutes later, he'd come back. And this went on for 4 hours, 5 hours. I'm beside myself thinking, oh, why can't I get a bite? Why won't he? Obviously, he's not going to take a whole bait, so I changed. I got a boilie, cut it in half, and I put them on back to back like a little butterfly. I thought, that'll do. Lowered it down on the spot, tucked all the line in the margin. I looked at it and thought, well, I can't see anything other than my 2.5 baits. And for the next 3 hours, he drove me potty, coming in, out. And I got to a stage where I thought, I ain't going to catch him. He's uncatchable. He is so cagey in it, everything he done. And he done, this is in the book, he done something twice, which absolutely blew my mind. He actually came under this little bush, and I thought, hey, there he is. And you couldn't miss him. And I'm talking, he's there. He's a yard away from me. He's come in, his fin has come out of the water. That's how close he is to me. And then he went on his side. He tipped over on his side, and he went down the slope, and I saw his eyeball move, and I thought, no, surely not. He's having a look. I can't believe that. And I thought nothing of it. He drifted off, and I waited. I thought he'd be back. 10 minutes later, he come back, and it was like I was watching an action replay. He'd done exactly the same thing. Came along the same path, fin came out, got to the little, there was a bit of wood in the water, got to this bit of wood, turned on his side, went down the slope, eyeball moved, and I thought, oh, I don't believe what he's doing, this fish. And everything was in slow motion. He never panicked once. Not once did I see his fins come up where he thought, I'm in danger here. And I was about to give up, to be honest with you. I thought, I ain't going to catch this fish, but I'll carry on trying, nevertheless, until it gets dark. Or little Zola drives me potty because he wants grub. And then he just came in one time, and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden I thought, oh, go on. And he tipped up, and all of a sudden my rod is just roared off. I had it on a little mat. No buzzer or nothing like that. Landed Wimbledon.
And that was it's a huge comment. And would you say that the king of the lake at that point?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it was for me.
Yeah.
Oh, strangely, I caught Wimbledon 15 years prior to that at £23 from the same swim.
Oh, really?
Not the same spot, but from the same swim, and it was £23. 15 years later, 47.4.
And presumably a fish that, you're happy to share with Pete at that sort of size as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's no longer with us, this particular fish, is it? But would that have been one of the Claremont fish?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So the fish...
Unfortunately, you can't see the nick in its tail. It had a little nick in its tail that you knew it was Wimbledon. Now, there was a few big commons in Southgate at the time. I actually saw one night. I think the Radish caught one when I was there at 37, and when it went in the net, we actually thought it was Wimbledon because it had a little nick in its tail.
Right.
But it was 37, and we queried it because it was 37, and then when we really looked at it, we realised it wasn't Wimbledon, but it was very similar. Strangely, when I had it in my landing net, I netted it, and because the water was low, I actually got down in the water with my net, and I sat there with it in the water, and I actually took my waistling round with me, which was a bit nonchalant, I thought, but I did. I took my waistling, no scales, I just took my landing net, me little mat, pocket full of bait, and I took me waistling. When I netted it, I actually threw the waistling over its head. And I knew what it was, obviously, but I sat there, smiling like a Cheshire cat, singing to myself, happy birthday, happy birthday. And every now and again, I'd already phoned John Harry and said, John, sit on that, son. He said, I'll be up in 10 minutes. Every so often, I have to lift in it's Wimbledon. I don't know why, I just get to tell myself I'd actually caught Wimbledon,
And this was actually on the day of your 55th birthday?
I was 55 that day.
Yeah. And probably the best birthday present you got that day, I guess.
Oh, without a doubt.
During that whole period, the whole Savay period, I think you were quite integral in what was going on over in France. I know you've done a lot of pioneering on some of the river systems, the Seine, etc. But it's the kind of Le Quay experience that I do want to just delve into quickly, because that really set the mould for British carp waters abroad, didn't they?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you came to be involved in Le Quay, because it was a place you spent a lot of time in.
Tom and Bernie, who were loonies, I met them at Savay, just got on with them. They were friends with Martin Locke. I was working for Martin. And then just one day, Bernie phoned me up and said, how'd you fancy being a bailiff in France? Me and Tom have got a little lake. and we're going to run some holidays there. The first year, I think it was, you had to get yourself there. Never a coach or nothing like that. Oh, I hummed and hard about it and thought, I don't know, I'm not sure about that.
Were you married at the time?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
was that a conversation you?
I spoke to the wife. She said, yeah, go for it. She said, chance of a lifetime.
Yeah.
I spoke to Martin about it and said, you know, look, I'm now fully rep. I'm not working a brickyard. I'm not driving a van. So my job is selling tackle. I spoke to Martin about it, and Martin said, well, look, it's only a week, a month. How long does it take you to do your shops? I said, 7 to 10 days. So I could do my shops every month. I could still go to France. Martin was happy with it. I thought, that'd do me then. So off I went to Le Quay, and still going today.
But for those who weren't around at the time, there are now hundreds of waters in France.
Hundreds.
Run by British
Yeah.
anglers. Was Le Quay the first?
As far as I know.
Yeah.
As far as I know, they'd already done a few coach trips to Cassine. I think Paul Regent done a few coach trips to Cassine early days, but no one had their own fishery, so to speak. And I think it was the second year that Tom and Bernie decided that they would actually do minibus trips. I think the first year they had a minibus and a trailer, took 12, I think maximum of 12 people. They had a minibus, a trailer, and an espace. Yeah, and I used to go every 3 weeks. It was great. I loved
So
it.
you were on the minibus with the anglers?
Yeah.
Going across, and how long? And you stay there for a week?
Stayed for a week, cooked them the food, looked after them. Yeah, it was great.
Were you able to fish at all during that
Yeah,
period?
I fished at Quay, and then I got involved fishing down the River Seine, which I absolutely loved. It was brilliant. I was breaking the law, which there's a certain buzz about fishing somewhere you shouldn't be. And although we knew it was wrong, if you was careful, and I was careful, you never ever got caught. I come close a couple of times getting caught, but I never actually got caught.
And this was the Seine system and the pits that came off of that river?
Yeah, there's masses of them. There's hundreds of them.
Right.
Fishing was very hard. It wasn't easy at all. I spent, once I'd done my chores, so to speak, at Le Quay in the morning, like done a bit of shopping, got some water, because in the early days they never had any running water. I had to go up to the village every day in a little van and fill the buckets up with water and bring water back, get a bit of shopping.
Fresh French bread, presumably, from the
Every
bakery.
day, yeah. I used to then get in a little motor, because they had a little motor. I used to have a little drive around the river and look for spots. In them days, I used to think, I'll go and find some fish. Only once did I ever see fish in the daytime in a river. Never ever saw nothing. So in the end, you should just pick a spot that looked good, bait it, go back that night. Blanked, God knows how many times, but occasionally got it right. They're very nomadic, the fish. You could have 2 or 3 in one night, maybe even more. And you think, I'll hit it off here, come back here tomorrow night, go back the next night, do exactly the same thing, nothing. Not a bite, not see nothing, not hear nothing, they're gone.
So, and that the unknown element of that, was that a big reason why you enjoyed it?
It was lovely, because it was unknown, you didn't know what he was going to catch, and it was illegal, which I found an absolute buzz.
Yeah. And Le Quay itself, was this in a period when because there was a lot of hostility at some stage towards English having set up a fishery?
We never saw it.
No.
We never saw the hostility at all.
No.
We got on well with the locals. The locals were fine. I should explain that the Quay fishery that was owned by the Carrasco family, and Mr. Carrasco, lovely man, he's not with us anymore, unfortunately. His son is now the mayor. Mayors have massive say, don't they? So, and Bernie Stamp can speak French, so it was never an issue. We never had any problems at all.
And what kind of people were on those early trips, and what kind of challenges did they present to someone who was bailiffing? I presume you were guiding as much as bailiffing.
Yeah, just let them get on with it, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, they weren't massively stocked in the early days. I mean, originally they only had one lake, the old lake. And then they decided to stock that. I was there on the first stocking. I've got probably 2 hours of video of taking fish out of a lorry, putting them in, 20s, 30s, doubles, hundreds of them. And then they decided to get the other lake, and then it snowballed from that, really.
And at the time, it would have been a marketing success because there wasn't anyone else in the game
doing it.
So if you were English and you wanted to go to France and you wanted to take the doubt out.
Yeah, of the driving and all that. And then I think Dream Lake started up.
Yeah.
Which wasn't originally, the Dream Lake wasn't far from the quay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's since moved, and that's a big complex of waters now, which again's done very well for itself, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it a period that you look back on with fondness, those early Liquid days?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Because presumably if you're there to bailiff and you're doing a bit of fishing on the side when you can, you must have been socialising a fair bit as well, because what else can you do?
Lots of drinking.
And actually, when you came out of that period, having read the book, there was consideration to how much of that was going on, Clive, wasn't there?
Well, basically, I realised I had to pack it in, because I ended up, I can't remember how many years I've done it for, 6, 7 years, don't know. But I think on my last year, I was probably definitely drinking too much. I was getting off the coach, putting my rods out on the patio, putting them back on the coach, going home. I wasn't fishing at all. I was basically feeding the anglers and drinking beer. And I'll admit, it was wrong for me. Punters loved it.
Yeah,
they all
you're the host, aren't you?
And they all wanted a drink, and they were all buying me drinks, and they all wanted a drink. And in the end, I think the night I've actually written about it. The night when it dawned on me, when I'd had a skinful, somebody caught a 50-pounder, I believe, from the other side of the old lake. Came round the lodge. I was probably sitting on the patio drinking. So and so's had a 50. I said, "Oh, I'll come round and have a look." I just sorted something out here. Off they went. I tried to go round the path without a torch, and I was blotto. I walked straight into a tree. I walked straight into it. I literally knocked myself out. Broke my glasses.
Right.
And I woke up. I never saw the fish. No one came to find me. And I can remember waking up thinking, God, what have I done here? I've bashed my head here. I went straight, had a shower, went to bed. In them days, bivvy days were over. We had 2 little lodges with proper beds in and all that, electric light, which was great. I went to bed soaking wet, and when I woke up in the morning, I felt I was rotten as a pear. And that's when it hit me. I thought, I've got to pack this in.
And that meant the end of Liquid for you as well?
I thought to myself, that's got to be the end, because if I carry on doing what I'm doing, I'm probably going to do something I regret, or it's going to kill me.
And it's a tough gig, that, the bailiff and abroad thing. So Tob and Bernie must have been quite sad to see you go, because they're not easy to replace someone who's going to...
Possibly. I mean, to be honest, when I phoned Bern, I made a decision 3/4 of the way through the season that it was going to be my last year. I didn't want to tell them, because I thought, they're mates, and I feel like I'm letting them down. But I thought, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. I spoke to my missus. She said, well, sounds like you need to do it. I said, anyway, to be honest, I've had enough of it. I've had enough of cooking, looking after people. Don't get me wrong, I met loads of fantastic people, but you did get the wrong bad apple sometimes that messed the whole week up for you. I'd had enough of that, and I thought, I just got to do it. So I phoned Bern up, and I said, listen, Bern. He said, I know what you're going to say. I said, go on. He said, packing it in, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am. I've had enough of it, Bern. He said, I thought you had. I said, I'll be honest with you, Bern. I'm turning into alcoholic. The thing was, it was all free. Everyone's buying your beer all the time, and I love a beer, even to this day, but I moderate now.
Yeah.
And that was the end of my Liquid days.
Have you been back?
Loads of times.
Yeah.
I've been back as Bernie's helper.
Yeah.
I've been back. They've been great to me, Tom and Bernie. They've virtually said, I can go whenever I like. Just pick the phone up. If you want to go, let me know. You can go.
Do they live out there now? Or
no, they still live at home.
Right.
They still go out occasionally. They don't go much. They've got a permanent bailiff now.
Yep.
Bob Hodges. Brilliant. Tim Hodges' his dad.
Oh, right.
Sorry, Tim Hodges' his son, Bob. Fantastic bloke.
I was going to say, Tim Hodges' dad must be really old.
Well, he's the same age as me, I think. And Tim spends a bit of time out there with him. Bob now lives out there. He's got a lovely girlfriend, got a kid.
Yeah.
Bob loves it. Bob's young. Doesn't drink.
Yeah.
Bob does not drink.
Can't be swayed by the beers.
No, he does't drink at all, Bob. He's a non-alcoholic man. Lovely fella, really good angler, looks after the punters immensely well. And he's a great bloke. I sometimes go out and see Bob. I've been over a few times in the winter when Bob's wanting to come home, and I've gone out to look, because I don't like leaving the place empty, and I've gone out and looked after the place, and I've had some brilliant winter trips out there.
I can imagine.
Oh, unbelievable.
It must be beautiful when
You've
it's quiet.
You've got 4 lakes to yourself.
Yeah.
Take your pick. You just disappear up your backside. You don't know which one to fish. It's great.
And how have the lakes changed since you first went there?
Just vast. Well, originally they only had the one lake. The other 3 lakes were basically holes in the ground bare. There wasn't a tree in sight. Now you wouldn't recognise the places.
Right.
They're now trees everywhere, hanging in the water. Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful place now, absolutely beautiful. And the fish have just gone up and up and up. It's never done a 70-pounder. We know that. I think all 3 lakes have done 60s, but they know that it's not the type of venue where you're going to go and catch a 70-pounder. They know that. But you can go there, and I know people, because if I look at their website quite a lot now, and they've got a little Facebook group, and you look at it, and people go out there, and they absolutely love it, because you meet people, you have friends. The lodge has been rebuilt completely from the one that we built, which was a right laugh in itself. Us builders, yeah, that's a laugh, that was. It's been completely rebuilt, fabulous lodge, showers, toilets, got the lot. And that is a focal point of it. You all have your dinner there, everyone gets on, it's fantastic. And people make friends, and you can catch 50-pounders.
Which is what, presumably 90% of the travelling British public want to do. Yeah.
Catch 40-pounders, 30-pounders. They fight like Billy O. All right, it's like every fishery. There are times when it's very difficult, especially around spawning time. But there are times when you shut your eyes and catch them.
It did cost you a finger, Clive. I think you said before we started recording.
Yeah, it did cost me a finger. that one there, that's, as you can see, gone. That was...
I didn't notice that.
Yes.
That's like... it almost throws you off. You almost... Yeah, you just don't...
Strangely, look, if you don't notice it like that, do you?
No,
right?
That's what I mean.
As soon as I do that...
Yeah, then you can see
notice
it.
Yeah, strangely that, isn't it?
Sorry, what happened there?
Perfect hand for 10-pen bowling, isn't it? I actually went on a carp match, believe it or not. I was still working in a trade at the time, and John Richard phoned me up and said, "Oh, we're doing it's going to be called the Lequy 4x4 Challenge." Oh yeah, what's that all about? It's going to be 4 teams: tackle box team, secret agents, which was us, Korda team, and I can't fit the others. Well, anyway, there was 4 teams in it. First of all, I wasn't that interested. I said, I don't really want to do that. And then I thought about it, and John kept on at me, and I said, oh, right, I'll come. I've got to say, I loved it. It was blinding. Tim Paisley came on the tackle box team. They had a few ringers at tackle box, Lee Jackson. They were nothing to do with the Lequy. Korda were there. Damien was there. Danny was there. Steve Rose, and I can't remember the other fellas.
Steve Spurgeon, Chris Rose.
Yeah, sorry, them two. They were there. Fished all week, and basically it was a pound a point. So if you had a 39-pounder, it's 39 points. If you had a 39-12, it was still 39 points. The winner at the end of it got a trophy. So that was it. It was a great tournament. It was great. On the Tuesday, we started fishing on, I think it was Sunday morning, the competition so-called started. On the Tuesday, I was sitting in my bivvy, and my little guest chair was outside, and I had my coat on it. I had a little waterproof coat was on it. It was about, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning, something like that. I think it was after breakfast. It was about 10 o'clock. Started to rain a little bit, and I thought, oh, it's raining. I left it. I thought, oh, my coat's out there. Then it got a little bit harder, and I thought, oh, I need to get my coat in. Now, I had shorts on and sandals on.
I don't like the sound of this already.
No, I'm getting a bit tense.
All I did was I just got out my bivvy to get my coat. That's all I'd done. I thought I'd just get my coat and bring my coat in. I stood up, and the bank wasn't flat. It was a little bit of a slope. And as soon as I got out, both my feet just went from under, because it was wet, I just skidded.
Yeah.
And I landed on my hand. Unbeknown to me at the time, I landed on a tree stump. As soon as I hit the deck, I thought, oh no, I broke my finger. The pain was immense. So I actually got my bucket, tipped my bait on my bed chair, scooped up a bucket of water, put my hand in a bucket of water in front of my bivvy. I was kneeling down, I put my head in my pillow on my bed and screamed. The pain was immense. I looked at my finger and I thought, I broke my finger. I knew I busted it. I then went to the lodge, saw Tob. Tob said, that don't look too good, son. Do you want to go to the hospital? I went, no, I ain't going to the hospital, Tom. I said, get me some peas out of the cupboard. So they got me a couple of bags of peas. I sat in a lodge with a couple of bags of peas, frozen peas on it, taking paracetamol or something. Guess a couple of beers. I'll have a couple of beers while I'm at it. And then basically I went back to my plot and I thought, that's knackered. So I had a finger stool. So I cut off the finger bit, put it on my finger, got some black electrical tape and wound it around my 2 fingers like that. And I thought, I'll just carry on fishing. Carried on fishing. My finger was terrible all week. Really, really painful. But, you know, just got on with it. Cut a long story short, 10 months later, after seeing no end of people who kept telling me, it'll be all right, it'll heal up, I actually saw a proper hand consultant who took one look at it and went, and I'll quote, he said to me, how honest do you want me to be? And I went, honest as you like, mate. I said, I've had it for 10 months now. It's driving me potty. It was like that. Every time I did something, I caught it. And it was so painful.
Yeah.
I had been doing exercises over a chair, which they told me to do, like that.
So
they said, you must keep bending it, because otherwise it's going to seize up on you. I kid you not, I'm not ashamed of this. I cried one day. The pain from me doing that, I thought I got to stop doing it. I went to see a physio woman who took one look at it and she went, no, stop. Something really badly wrong with that. You need to go and see this doctor, Mr. Stone, his name was, who was a hand consultant. I went to see him, and as I go back to what I said, he said to me, how honest do you want me to be? I said, 10 months, honest as you like. And his words were, it's fucked.
Sorry.
I went, oh, really? That bad? He went, I can't do nothing with that. I said, well, what can you do with it? He said, cut it off.
So I'm laughing because I wouldn't know how to handle that situation.
I was horrified. And I thought, really? He said, look, I'll explain. Your knuckle, that bit, is up there.
Oh.
He said, so, and not only is it up there, you ain't broke it, you've smashed it, it's shattered to bits. He said, I could operate, but in all honesty, I wouldn't be able to repair it, and you'd have trouble with it. The easiest solution is, I've got 2 solutions. I can either cut it off, or you can have it fused, right? I said, well, what's fused? He said, well, it'd be like that, permanent, stiff, right? So he said to me, right, you need to go home today, come back and see me next Wednesday. This is at my local hospital. And between now and then, write down the questions you want to ask me. I said, okay, I'll do that. So I went home. Again, I'll be honest, I was a bit tearful. I thought, I'm going to lose my finger. I spoke to my sister, who's a nurse, right? And she said to me, what's the bloke's name? I said, his name's Mr. Stone. She said, oh, he's the top hand consultant. You need to do what he's telling you. And my sister said, look, if you have it fused, think about it now. When you bang it now, it hurts. That's not going to be no different. If you have it fused, all right, you'll still have it. But every time you do something and bang it, it's going to be a pain. So you probably need to have it taken off. Okay, all right, okay. I thought I'll do that. In the meantime, I think it was 2 weeks later when I had to go back, I'd been down to Solar and I'd seen Sam Rosier and a couple of lads in the unit where they made the stainless, where they put the stainless together. And I told them, they said, how's your finger? I said, oh, I've got to have it amputated. Really? I said, yes, it's smashed, it's knackered. And I'm thinking, I'll have a stump. I'll have a little stump. They'll cut it off there. So I'll have a little stump, like Dave Allen, the old comedian. A lot of youngsters won't know who he is, but very funny man. So I thought, I'll have a little stump. And Sam said to me, well, that'd be all right. Sam, we'll make you a little baiting needle that fits over the stump. Oh, result. I said, I'll have a hand like Captain Cook. I'll have that. I'm quite happy with that. So I went back to the hospital with my little list of questions. I said to the fella, I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to have it amputated. I said, he said, where do you think I'm going to cut it off? I said, well, there. He said, I can't do that. I said, why not? He said, well, your knuckle's up there, as I've already explained to you. It's absolutely shattered in bits. We can't do nothing with that. So if I cut it off there, you're still going to have a lot of problems with that stump. And I won't do that. So if you're going to have it amputated, I have to take the whole thing off right round the knuckle. The first thing I thought was, fuck, there goes my solar baiting needle.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the end of that, and that is what happened.
Do you ever have like phantom fingers?
All the time.
Do you?
Now we're talking about my hand.
Yeah.
that part of my finger there is going zzz,
Right. Because your brain's trying to control it, sort of
like
thing.
a battery on your tongue.
Yeah.
I've had over the year. I mean, that happened a long time ago, but I've had, I think, 3 or 4 occasions where I've been sitting at home and I've thought, oh, that's not there. Can't be. I felt my finger move.
Right.
It's not there.
Yeah.
I've had the occasion when I've gone, oh, I've got an itch. I ain't, because it ain't there.
Mad. It hasn't affected your fishing though.
It did for a while. I couldn't use a throwing stick because I'm left-handed. I couldn't use a throwing
Oh,
stick.
yeah.
I love using a throwing stick, putting bait out, and for a while I was using a throwing stick, and every time I did that, it hurt.
I was going to say, Clive,
Not to the extent where
Yeah.
you was crying or anything like that, but it was like, oh no, I can't be doing with that.
and if anyone's ever tried to throw a stone or something with their wrong hand, you'll know how difficult picking up one in your right hand would have been.
And then I have to say, it was Damien Clark who said to me at Savay, I'll sort your throwing stick out, son. I said, how you can do that? And he said, I'll get you a Daiwa one. That was in the days when there was no carbon throwing sticks.
Yeah.
Damien gave me this Daiwa throwing stick, and I still use it now. And the thing is with it, it's so light that I can use it like that with my thumb
Yeah.
on the end and go, it doesn't affect that bit at all.
So, Clive, so what finger is it? Your index finger?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Left-handed index finger, yeah.
yeah, that's just
And I'm left-handed.
yeah. I've got he's done it. That's why I said earlier I didn't notice it because I've got an uncle that's had a thumb amputated, and it was as you said, it's halfway up, and there's quite a noticeable
Yeah.
stump, obviously, but that's like
Your knuckle's gone,
Yeah, it's gone.
hasn't it,
completely.
entirely?
so that's because you shattered the entire thing, not only the finger but essentially part of the hand
Yeah.
as well, all from just falling on it.
I fell on a tree stump that had been cut down.
Right. Okay.
I did at the time. I didn't know, but
Yeah. Of course.
I went back about, I don't know, I guess 6-8 months later as Sam's guest. And he said, where are you going to go? I said, the first thing I'm going to do is get that axe out of the cupboard. I'm going to No Carp corner and I'm going to smash the granny out of that stump. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. Fair play.
I went round with an axe and I just battered it. And I thought, you won't be doing anyone else.
No. And well, it's a good little segue actually, because you're talking about the Daiwa throwing stick and Damien. I do want to talk about one of the little known innovations in carp fishing that became a monster product that you actually came up with, Clive, and that's the Krusha.
Yeah.
So for those people who don't know, Clive is the brains behind the Korda Krusha, which at the time, well, I don't know, you say in your book that you think maybe every carp angler in the country had one at one point, which I'd say is a fair point.
Well, that's what someone at Korda told me. They said,
Yeah.
I think it was Damo said, I think every carp angler in the world's got one of these.
Yes.
There you go. There's is that the you told us earlier? That's the
That is
first
the
one?
original one.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've still got that. I've still got that at home.
That's surely a bit of carp fishing.
So for
history
people
right there.
listening, this is the see-through prototype. So
Yeah.
it's a translucent Krusha.
That's the back wall in my garden, that is. That's taken in my garden, that picture.
Yeah. And it's perfectly focused on the back wall as well, Clive, isn't it? Don't get Clive to do your pictures, everyone. So where did the idea? Well, we know where the idea came from.
Let's beat about the bush. It's basically a big dope grinder. It's
Yeah.
as simple as that. When I thought of the idea, I was a smoker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to hide the fact I was. I don't smoke anymore.
Yeah.
I was actually at Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
I'd gone to Rainbow, and it was my first trip at Rainbow. I got a trip through Martin Lock, and Martin said to me, take a big pair of pliers, air dry your baits, and loads of PVA bags. I said, what do I do that for? He said, crush your baits up, put in a bag, go out in a boat, that's the way you catch them. Oh, okay. I listened to that. That's advice from someone that's been there,
Yes.
caught loads of fish. I thought that'd do me. So I air dried all my baits, rock hard, took a great big pair of pliers, and for 2 or 3 days I sat there breaking bait, and it was driving me potty. I ended up with a great big blister on my finger. And I thought, this is nonsense. I went for a shower, had a shower, and I all the time in the shower, I'm thinking to myself, how can I break up my bait better and quicker? So I went outside the hut, at Pascal's outside, there's loads of bits of timber and stuff like that. I found myself 2 little boards of wood, and I thought, yeah, that'll do. I'll take them with me. So I took them back to my swim, and the idea was, I'll put all the boardies on, put 20 so baits on this board, put the other one on top of it, and jump up and down on it, break them. It worked to a degree, but they all flew all over the place. Bits got stuck in the wood, and I was pissed off by then. I thought, that's nonsense. I threw it all away, and I thought, I'll have a joint. Got the little Krusha out. As soon as I did that, I looked at it and thought, imagine that big. That might work. So I emptied it out, got myself a little bait, a hard bait, by the way, put it in. It was hard to break it, but I broke it, and I did that 2 or 3 times, and it smashed it to bits. And I thought, oh, that works. Let's try a tiger nut. Try a tiger nut. That was easier. Whoa, that's good. Put a little handful of hemp in. I thought, oh, blinding. I think it was probably 2 years later, it arrived.
Now, you mentioned it then in saying, let's not beat about the bush. I remember a lot at the time that people were saying, it's just a weed grinder. But the point is, no one had made that leap. It's not just because it already existed does not mean it's any less of a leap to have made. No. And there's another shot of it. Now, this is interesting. This is showing the configuration of the teeth, right? Which I believe, because I think if I hadn't started at Korda at the time, I don't think I had, but certainly not long afterwards, I was made aware of just how difficult they found it to get that configuration right.
I think they did. I think, from my memory, they'd had a couple of goes at it. Damien phoned me up and said, "This is the last chance. If this next one doesn't work, we're going to have to abandon it because it's costing too much money." I said, "Yeah, that's fair enough." I actually had some, how it all started. Originally, me and John Richards were going to do it together. I spoke to John about the idea, and he said, "Yeah, I think it's a great idea. We'll look into it." So we had a little look into it. I had some engineer's drawings made up of how it was going to work. I left it for a while, and then I actually went into the tackle box one day, and I was speaking to Gary and Kevin Pete and Lee Jackson. And I told them, because I wanted some feedback of what people thought the idea was. And I knew I could trust them. So I told them about it, and they both said, "That's a really good idea. I like the sound of that." And they actually said to me, "Korda, right up their street, that." I said, "You think so?" They said, "Yeah. Why don't you talk to them?" Okay, I did. So I phoned up. I don't know who I spoke to at the time. It might have been Alan Penning, certainly Damo. I went and had a little meeting, told them my idea, showed them my drawings. And like you say, the last one that turned up, Damien phoned me up and said, "The last one's here." I said, "Go on." I was waiting for bad news, to be honest. He said, "It's brilliant." He was all excited. He said, "It works. We've smashed up loads of bait this morning. It's fantastic." I said, "I'm on my way."
Right.
I got in my car and drove straight up. I think it was at Collier Road at the time. Went straight to Collier Road, had a look at it, and it was that one. And there we go. We sat in the office and break it out and said, "Wow, there you go. That's going to work, surely." The rest is history, isn't it?
Well, it was a phenomenon, wasn't it?
At the time, they said to me, I remember them saying to me, "Why do you think it'll work?" And I said, "Look, at the moment, everybody is using PVA and smashing their baits up. Everyone's sitting there with a bucket between their legs doing that, doing 1 or 2 at a time." I said, "So
We've all
you do
done
that,
it,
you
yeah.
can put 12 or 15 or whatever and do that. That's got to be a winner."
And obviously, without going into detail, how do you go about negotiating with that kind of? Because obviously, you don't know. You're not an inventor as such at that stage. How do you do it?
I trusted people.
Yeah.
You know, and I gave it to what I consider to be the best people that I knew I could trust for a start.
Yeah.
They never let me down.
And still use it today? Well, you don't. I know you don't do a lot of carp fishing at the moment. But
No, I have used it. I don't use that one.
No.
That one's safe, that one.
Yes.
But yeah, I still use it, yeah. And I still work in a shop 2 days a week, and no matter how many crushers we get in, within a week, they've all gone.
Really?
Yeah.
Mad. And but this
I would be interested to know exactly how many they've sold.
Yes.
Must be, I would guess close to 1 million.
Which
I
is
mean, that's only
incredible.
a guess, but
Yeah. Yeah, your little baby gone to just about every corner of the world, no doubt. But that's not the only things. I mean, are you an inventor, Clive, or are you just someone with that kind of brain?
I think I just got a mind. I've come up with some really crazy ideas that people have said, "That's a great idea, but it's totally undoable." I can't give you an examples
No, of
because
course
they're
not.
too long-winded. But I come out with a little magnet hockey stick, which was, again, I had some magnets in my garage, and I was fascinated with them. I kept looking at them. I kept playing with them. I had some that I had one on my hand and one there. And I'm moving that one. This one's moving. And I'm thinking, under the table. And I'm thinking, there's got to be something in there. I tried to make a backrest that you'd put one on the back of your rod to stop it getting pulled in. It didn't really work. Put them to one side. And then one day, just totally out of the blue, I think I was messing around in my garage, and I suddenly thought, put me in a hockey stick. So instead of unscrewing your chain, because at the time everyone was using chains, you just go, doink, it's in. So I took it, a long story, I took it to my friend Mick Nolan at Signet Tackle. He drilled out a couple of hockey sticks. I tried it. worked.
And did that go to solar first?
It was a solar product
Yeah.
for a while, and
Yeah.
then a few other people.
Obviously,
Done
it's widespread now. You know,
Yeah.
it's a widely used thing.
And I still use mine, and still use the original ones.
Yeah, and didn't end there though, did it? You know, you have got. So I didn't even know about the hockey stick thing, Clive.
Okay.
But the pure flow thing, that was one of yours.
Personally speaking, I personally feel that out of all of them, that's the most inventive. Because
So this is the particle bucket.
The Krusha is
yeah.
we know what that is. It's
Yeah.
a big version of a dope grinder. The hockey sticks, magnet's a magnet. I love using particles.
Tell us about this because I you know, it isn't a product that I don't think caught fire, let's say, but tell us about what it is, Clive.
Well, basically, it's a bucket within a bucket.
Yeah.
But the bucket that's inside the bucket is a sieve. Basically, it's got loads of holes in it,
Yeah.
and you put your particle in it, and it's not square shaped. It's different sizes. So when you lift it up, you twist the bucket and you stack it on top of the bucket,
Yeah.
and all the liquids all drain out into the bucket rather than on the bank, on your back, or on your bivvy.
Yeah.
Because I love using particles, but I used to hate trying to tip the water out, trying to not spill the particle because of birds coming in your swim and stuff like that. And I always found it a nuisance. And then I was actually in a shop at work one day. I worked in a shop in Crawley, tackle warehouse. He's asked me to get that in. So there you go, John, that's for you. And I actually picked up a live bait bucket, and it had a cage inside it. And I looked at it and thought, do you know what? If you'd done that in a bucket that fit inside a square bucket that you could lift and stack on the top, you could let all your liquid run out without it going on the bank all over the place. Happy days. So I went down to a local DIY shop a couple of days later, got myself 2 buckets, one that fit inside another one, sat in my back garden for about 3 days drilling holes like that. I drilled hundreds of holes in this little thing, and I thought, this is it, it's either going to work or it's not. I put a load of particle in it, put a load of water in it, dropped it, and it went, sunk. And I thought, there you go. I lifted it up, and as soon as I lifted it, all the water just drained straight out. I thought, that's perfect. That is perfect. It just needs doing properly.
Yeah.
At the time, I worked for Tracker, and Tracker were very good to me. And I have to go back to the Krusha because Carl at Tracker, Carl Drabble, who was the governor, said to me one day, if ever you get another idea like that, we won it. And to be fair, because I worked for them and they looked after me, I thought, you know what, I'll let you have it. So I told them about it, and they patented it. And but it's not that popular because I don't think people know what it's about. But for me, if you use particles or you wash your baits out or you like using liquids and you don't want to waste them, because at the end of the day, when it's all run through and you look at all that in the bottom, you think, I'll just pour that back in my bottle. No wastage, no spillage, no nothing.
And actually, of course, you know, I like a bit of particle as well, and it's best kept in the liquid it's
Of
boiled
course,
in. So
yeah.
you want to almost return it to that.
And as soon as you drop the bucket in,
Yeah.
it sinks.
Yeah.
Goes straight to the bottom. So it goes back in all the liquids. As soon as you lift it up, twist it, stack it on the top, all the water or all the glugs to just drain out.
And have you always been minded to invent?
No, not
Or is
really.
that
I
something
just
that came
play
later?
around with things.
Yeah.
I think probably down to boredom at home, not knowing what I'm doing. Because I've been self-employed for a long time, and I'll be honest, I've had a great job. I've never had to work every day. Lots of times when I didn't want to go fishing, for instance, or I was off rotor at Savay, I never wanted to fish anywhere else. So what do I do today? Oh no, I'll go in my garage. I've got a drawer full of just piles of rubbish, bits of tackle, and I mess about with things.
You're a tinkerer.
I'm a tinkerer, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I'm
in a fine
tinkering at the
tradition.
moment with something
really?
as well, yes.
Oh, nice. Let's hope we can see another Clive Williams product. That'd be great. Now, your own fishing, Clive. Now, Savay, you let go in the end, which must have been a hard decision.
Very hard. Hardest decision I've had to make, to be honest. Broke my heart to drop out, but I can't go night fishing and leave my wife and feel comfortable.
Okay.
Simple as that. My wife has a very serious problem, and I just can't go and feel comfortable. So
Do you think?
I kept my ticket for so long, and I think in my last 3 seasons, is it 3, 6, 9? I've done 6 nights or 4 nights. I worked it out. It was about £900 a night, and I just wasn't going. And I just thought, I really didn't want to drop my ticket. I wanted to keep on. I'll be honest, I was hoping for a miracle. And then one day I said to myself, I looked at my missus and I thought, there's not going to be no miracle. I knew that, but you live in hope, don't you? And I just thought there's not going to be no miracle. And not only am I wasting all that money, I'm actually stopping someone else from fishing it by sitting on a ticket that I know I'm not going to use. So begrudgingly I dropped out. And it broke my heart to drop out.
Was that the end of, or at least for the moment, did that signal the end of your serious carp fishing?
Yeah, without question.
Yeah.
I think since then I've been to France once with my mate Kev, and that was in August 21. I've been since.
But you have found a way, as all anglers will.
Yeah.
You have found a way to get your fix.
I go fishing. I'll go to a local little carp pond, and it's only little. It's probably a couple of acres. I think the biggest carp in there is mid-20. And I go there for the perch and the roach and the rudd. And I go at first light in the morning and I'm home at 1 o'clock. And once I get in my car, I'm home in 10 minutes. So I know I'm never far from home. And being a fisherman, I enjoy it. I really do. But I do miss my carp fishing. There's no question about that. I do miss it. I miss blanking, if people can understand that. I miss getting up in the morning, making a cup of tea, wondering why you haven't had a bite, trying to work out why you haven't, having a walk round, having a chat with the lads. But I get my fix from slinging a float out, and I've had perch to 312. I've had a couple of roach to about £1.50 and £1.50 rudd, and I enjoy it. At least I go fishing.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that is the most important thing. And do you know what, Clive? If anyone deserves a miracle, mate, then you definitely deserve that miracle. So thank you so much for coming in, mate.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been lovely. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The Thinking Tackle Podcast.